after 7 here. Let's actually call this to order since we have a quorum.
Okay.
All right. It's what, 7:03, 4, somewhere in there. We'll call it to order. Under the first item of business, I suppose we should introduce ourselves for the cameras again. Brad, do you want to go first?
You got me.
All right.
Brad Sanderson, Townsend.
Chris Jers, Townsend.
Heidi Russ, Townsend. Carolyn Partridge, Wyndham.
John Everett, consultant to the committee.
Joe Winrick, also Townsend.
Emily Long, Newfane.
Shauna Little, Townsend.
Erin Zargo, Brookline.
Bucky Peltzu, Newfane.
Ken McFadden, Newfane.
Bill Antone, Superintendent.
Peter Barris, Recorder.
Just to clarify, Shauna, you're from Townsend, you're a resident of Townsend, but you're not actually a member of the committee?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Well,
Yeah.
no, I know that. I'm just
Yeah.
clarifying
Yeah,
for
sorry,
that.
correct.
It's like all of a sudden people are going to go, who, how did Townsend get another member? Who is this? What's going on here? We don't want to have any of that. And then you guys want to introduce yourselves quickly?
Anita Raphael, Media Desk.
Jerry Dyke Wyndham.
Nancy Dyke, Wyndham.
Thank you. All right. So first up is review and revise the agenda if we need to. I know I circulated an email and got some responses about needing to move the meeting from the 16th to a different date. I would say that could be under revising the agenda since we're talking about planning the agenda for November 16th. Right now, November 18th is winning based on all the responses I've gotten. There are a couple of people who can't do that date. There are a couple of flexible people, and then there's a whole bunch of, I can't do the 14th or 15th, but the 18th looks best. So if anybody has any comments that hasn't responded to the email, now would be the time to say so. But it's looking like the 18th.
You make a decision tonight or later?
Unless somebody speaks up now, I would declare the 18th the winner by email.
So Friday night, the 18th?
Yep. Okay.
I can't do the 18th. I think I put that in there.
Yeah, you put that in there, and Carolyn I knew couldn't do the 18th, but like more people couldn't do the 14th and 15th. You I hadn't heard from. What else we got?
I do the 18th.
I don't know my schedule until Wednesday of next week, what it's gonna be like for the rest of the month. So I'll be flexible, how's that?
Okay. All right.
Well, let us know next week.
Yeah.
I
We
would
should
like to
set a
do
date.
this tonight. Let me just take a look at the emails at a break, and we'll get it by the end of the night. Okay, public comment. You have some comments, public? Shauna?
It's my first meeting, so I'm just listening.
All righty. We need a motion to approve the minutes of both the 5th and the 19th, now that we've actually got them.
I'll move that we approve the minutes from October 5th. I think we probably have to do them separately.
Okay,
Second?
all right. It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes from October 5th. Any discussion on those minutes? Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes as submitted, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Okay, minutes of October 19th. Anybody make a
I'll
motion?
make that motion that we approve the minutes from October 19th, rather.
Okay,
Second?
all right. It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes from October 19th. Any discussion on those? All right, hearing none. All in favor of approving the minutes from October 19th, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, we're
I'm
done.
abstaining.
You're abstaining? Okay. Okay. Next, we were going to start talking about the current draft report and the articles for submission to the Agency of Education. We had
If I
started.
could just say, I listed the A through H simply because those are the things that there were either changes or questions about. So it's not to limit discussion of the articles, it's just to help people go through.
No, I was gonna say, those were the articles where, I mean, there were some things last time that we went through where, you know, we sort of agreed this article stood the way it was okay, we could move on. These were the articles where there was certainly more discussion to be had. So, I don't know if you wanna go ahead and lead us through some of that, John, or? Want me to do it?
If you would at least call out what it is, because it's
Okay.
hard for me to both find them and.
Oh, no problem. So the first item on there is the opportunities from unification. That's on pages 6 and 7 of the current draft version 3. There's a bunch of highlighted, there's a lot of highlighted text in there dealing with some of the possible opportunities to be had from unification, and there's plenty of room for more in there.
And that was what I took from the discussion and synthesized the discussion from last time.
Is that also called some from the exploratory committee?
No,
No?
this is
This is just us?
just what things people said.
Okay.
So it's not that you all agreed on all those things, it's just things that were said.
Okay. Does anybody have anything they want to add to that, take issue with?
Joe?
Yeah, I'm
I
sorry.
would wonder how many of these would be possible under our current structure. I don't mean to say that we wouldn't include this as part of the document, but as I said a couple of weeks ago, I think whether or not we go forward with this, there's an opportunity for better coordination. And I'd just be curious to know which of these we could do currently.
I think that's probably a worthwhile conversation, but that's outside of the scope of work that we've actually been tasked to come up with. I mean, that would be a conversation perhaps if there was no consolidation, or we decided that this didn't work somehow and we were gonna go for some sort of an alternative structure. And then we would say, well, we can do this and this and this as well.
Okay.
Probably a lot of things are possible if you actually, a lot of things are possible if you can put the whole group together to cooperate. And historically, we've done pretty well with some of that. There are some things in here that would take a lot of wrangling to get done, but, again, a conversation for a different committee in a different place, I think.
Okay, I'd just like clarification on, it's the last bullet that actually has language in it. The first hollow bullet under that says touring authority. What is that word supposed to be?
Turning.
Okay, turning. All right, thanks. I didn't know if it was structuring.
Quick comment to get your question, Carolyn, and my response is that every one of these is possible. All of them are people dependent. It's whether they want to or not.
Okay. Thanks, Becky.
But
Go ahead.
I would also say that while I agree with that statement, there are barriers to doing it under the structure we've been in, or we would probably be doing them. We've been talking about this for a really long time, so there are
I
barriers.
simply said they're possible.
Yeah.
Probable is another aspect.
There are certainly have been roadblocks to some of these things that we, theoretically could do.
I
Thank
learned
you.
in my experience in administration that it's not a matter of can or can't, mostly it's will or won't.
Yeah. So no one has anything they want to add to that necessarily? We've corrected the one typo we found. Okay. The next item here is the financial analysis piece. That is pages 10 and 11, and also attachment C, which of this 28-page document is 26 and 27 and 28. Anybody think we're missing anything in there? It's, there's a lot of data there, there's a lot of analysis. There's some language in there starting to talk about, some of the things that would change, where we changed. We do need some more thing in there to talk about the assets and liabilities of the school, but that's just numbers that we can pull out and insert. I don't think those necessarily can be argued.
I think the first paragraph on page 10 needs to say something about the incentives were included in this. As I was just reading it again, I realized it didn't say that the incentives for unification were included in that paragraph.
Says it in
So
above.
there should be something in there.
Says it there.
Yeah, but I just think it ought to
So
be repeated.
you
In the
wanna,
writing.
you wanna put in this
I'm just gonna-
paragraph a sentence
I'm just gonna
that
add some,
says,
yeah.
okay.
Also, I'd like to bring up, and I'm sorry I have to do it again, but I'm going to. This is good in general, but how does it impact each town as far as dollar amounts? Which I believe you and I discussed, and we went over the town summaries of how much we send up to the state, how much we get back, how much we raised, and I believe there was other people that asked for basically the same information or something similar, and this is more a general of, oh, this is what we're saving, this is this, and
Well, I think it's in the appendices.
page 27, bottom page 27, is that what
This
you're
is
looking
what,
for?
this is, yeah, this is the report I
On
sent
page
you.
27. Okay. Okay, so this is how much we currently, and this is how much we would send.
Or cost. Or cost. Here, cost.
And now is this with the incentive or without the incentive?
This one is without, I think, and then the next, the second chart then shows it with the incentive, I believe. Yes,
Yeah, this one shows it with the incentive, right? And this one shows it without.
yes.
So the top of page 28 shows it with the incentive, and the bottom of page 27 shows it without.
John, on page 28, that last number there, the 103,455,
Yes,
that is the number that is referenced on page 10 of the
Right.
yes.
103,000? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay, so basically at the end of 4 years, providing there is no changes in enrollment, no changes in increases, which we know will not happen, due to the fact of there's always going to be increases in salaries and other expenses, that the numbers on the bottom of page 27 of 28 is where we would be after four years, correct?
No, it's where you would be if you were unified right now.
Right. And
Because it's exactly what you said, costs change, and the CLAs will change, but this is just where you would be if you were united into one system today.
So, so the question I have is, on page 28, the top, this chart, that is the first year, right? With the 8 cent.
Yes, yes.
So that's essentially, and I'm asking for you to reply from your experience, of a new unified board starting to work and develop their plans for the future. That first year is really before they really have an opportunity to try to maximize resources and decide where they're going. So this is probably the level where, which is why that so-called incentive is there.
Yes.
To help offset the differing tax rates that are coming in before school districts can find ways, merged school districts can find ways to operate more efficiently and more effectively for
Exactly.
their students.
Before any other kind of cost savings are realized at all.
Okay,
And it doesn't even include the, that first year transition grant either.
And, okay, the 150, or whatever the
Yeah.
balance is of the
The balance,
150.
yeah.
And then, just a quick follow-up, based on what Ken was saying, those costs that he's talking about, that, increases in salaries and, possible decline or not in enrollment, those are gonna happen anyway.
That's right.
Whether we go through this or not. I mean,
Right.
so we just have to keep that in mind. I think it's important.
That's why I said no to your question, Ken, because it's really just looking at right now. To go beyond that, there are too many variables to factor into that.
Following Emily's question, John, again, in your experience with these, the first year is the best it's gonna be?
No.
Not necessarily. The first year is the most
Worse.
incentives that you get from the state without doing any work on cost saving. So it's not
But as they take
necessarily,
away
for
small
instance, you
school
may
grants
find,
and
there's
take
some
away all
ways
kinds
to
of
share.
supports,
I'm
They
sorry?
don't go
As they
away.
take away the small school grants and supports, that's been talked about.
They'll only go away if you don't merge.
Right, that's if you don't do something, you don't unify.
No, that would be the first year, but
No, they stay, right now, they stay in perpetuity. For,
They stay
until the
in place.
legislature changes their mind on that.
if you can believe that, yeah.
But at least for
That's the law.
the next bunch of years, it was a big compromise in the whole bill to get that put in, so I would
I
expect.
cannot believe that school budgets are going to decrease so that the differences get larger and larger.
Whether you merge or not.
Yeah.
John, on the top of page 28, this would represent a budget for FY '20. Am I thinking correctly?
Top of 28, no, that represents FY 16, 17.
Using this formula?
Yes.
But the idea would be that a newly formed board would be developing a budget for FY '20.
Yes, yes,
Okay,
yes. And so that's when the incentives would
okay,
apply.
okay, thank you.
Patrick, so is there a place in the articles where, as these school districts merge, we equal the playing field? Because Newfane is coming to the table with some assets, and Townsend's coming to the table with some assets, and so is Jamaica. Jamaica's kicking in $5 per student, Newfane's kicking in $10, and Townsend's kicking in $20. Is there a way that that should be equalized so that on the first day of this new unified district, that all districts have the same amount of investment in it?
That certainly could be something that you wrote into the articles. The other group put it as one of the jobs of the new board, because the new board would come into effect this spring and would have time to begin working on those kinds of issues. But you have to remember, you're talking about, there are no long-term capital plans, so, that would have to be looked at. Seeing where people end up on their reserves right now, because boards may be spending down those reserves over the next couple of years. And there's so many things that's a dynamic situation, not a set in stone at the beginning kind of situation, from my point of view.
And you can't just look at assets, you have to look at liabilities.
Liabilities, and, yeah.
I think
Because
this is-
some schools have,
I think this is a very important question, because if we vote without having this information, or at least a really good idea as to what we need to add to, it could be that Jamaica votes in favor of this, and all of a sudden we now are being asked to kick in an extra $200,000, $300,000, $500,000 to balance that playing field for what the other towns are putting into the pot for an asset. And if we don't know what that's going to look like, then how do you inform your voters as to what are we actually voting on? Are we voting on turning our school building over and $200,000 in cash? Are we talking about, what is it?
Yeah, so there are a couple of things there. Number one, the new board has no authority over your existing reserves.
Right.
That is still the local board's responsibility. And the second thing I'd think about is the board is made up of members from each of the towns. So it's gonna be up to that board to work out some kind of a, some kind of an equalization to come into that next, the beginning of the new system.
Are we supposed to go back to our taxpayers and say, we don't know what your investment's gonna be, but we want you to support this? Because I think that's gonna be really tough. I think I need something to be able to show them, other than, we'll tell you later what your investment's gonna be.
Well, there's
big
spaces
still
on
haven't
here
filled
on
that in.
pages 10 and 11
Still
to
gotta
take
get
into
that.
account debt, reserve, and building
The
value.
current situation, but it's still gonna take some negotiations there, because they won't be the same, as you pointed out. I mean, they won't be the same.
To piggyback off what Drew's saying, we had a similar circumstance when we combined Newfane and Brookline, which is, let's just say that the new board decides that we need to consolidate and we need to either close a Townsend Elementary or Jamaica and combine the students from those two schools, okay, because this is a feasible possibility, okay? And because that will consolidate and that will save money, okay? And it will be up in the board's privy, however they go through their votes, and let's just say it happens, okay? Being the devil's advocate that I am. Then you will have a school building that belongs to either Jamaica or Townsend, right? Which at one time was the sole responsibility of the Townsend and or Jamaica board, okay? That it's not up to the town to budget to maintain that building, it is up to the school district to maintain that building. Therefore, who would maintain that building? Would it go back to the town? Would it be sold back to the town? Okay, you say yes, but it's not that easy, trust me.
We know. That if we stop using the building for education purposes, that it gets sold back to the town for $1.
Okay. Will the town be willing to accept that offer? You might concur the maintenance of a building that is not being used. Because the town might say, well, we have no place to put anything in there, and you can say no. I will refer to Sherry over here, who was on the negotiations for that, and it's not as simple even if you have someone in the building.
But then the district sells it, right?
Right.
Yeah, if the
That's
town
not-
doesn't want it,
Then
then the
there's
district can
an
sell it,
asset.
and there's an asset.
And then that has to go,
District
that has
sold
to
it,
go
we bought
before
it.
the whole town to
Yeah,
do
but you couldn't
a
tell me she
vote
bought it for $1.
to see whether or not to sell the building or keep it as a school. The town has to be willing to take it back from the school district, but the school district no longer exists because now it is brought into this other district.
Except they're taking it back not from the town school district, because you're right, it doesn't exist. They're taking it back from this other entity. So they get the choice to take it back or not. Is the way the article's written.
And if the town decides not to take back the property, then it's up to the school district to
To sell it.
maintain, to sell it.
maintain it,
to
sell it.
And until they sell it, they have to upkeep it.
That's right.
Just letting you know that can be an incurred cost. When you think you're saving money, it's gonna cost you more. Just letting you know.
And the other thing you could think about, back to what Drew said, is you could strike the part about selling it back to the town for $1. And you could just say it's just the property of this unified school district, and the unified school district can sell it for whatever, I mean, that would
And
be an
that-
option.
On the other hand, that could turn around and deter you too, because the town might say, well, if they're not gonna use it and they close the building, we might wanna use it and turn it into a senior center, or we.
No, I'm just
I'm
saying
just,
that's an option.
I'm just letting you know, letting you know, it's not as easy as you think.
So we had this conversation at length under the red and made the decision to do it this way because we thought that was the most fair process. So that's, I believe this pretty closely mimics what the
Yes,
article
yes.
was in the red. And, you know, at the time, everybody sitting in there and giving us feedback on it said that this was probably the most fair and equitable way to handle that.
But nobody had experienced it at that point.
I'm just commenting on why.
Yeah,
I know, I'm
it's in
just
there
saying,
because
and that's
what
why-
towns wanted.
Sherry and I can speak from experience that we know it's not as easy as everybody can just draw it out on a piece of paper.
So can you tell us about your experience with the Brookline building, with why it didn't work? Because
Well,
you're speaking and I hear you, but I don't know what happened, so.
Would you, since I talk too much? Thank you.
the town basically bought the building for $1. And after lengthy litigation, lawyer involvement, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, was there a grant, Ken? There was a loan from the state. It was a tax.
It was a
tax
construction aid.
It was a
Construction
construction aid loan.
aid for $200 and some thousand, as I recall.
Mhm.
And we had to get legal opinions as to whether we had to pay it back
Exactly.
if we bought the building. And we basically, the legal opinion was, I don't think so, the state's gonna look the other way. So we bought the building for $1, we maintained the building, we then subsequently leased the building to Sunny Lane Daycare. But we had maintenance on the building, we had, and it was at a favorable rent, quite a favorable rent, very favorable rent. But we had, maintenance on the property, maintenance on the boiler, blah, 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 electric bill, telephone bills, that kind of thing. So we own the building, the town owns the building, and Sunny Lane Daycare leases it from us.
What'd you do with the $200,000?
We were told that we would not have to pay it back.
So you used that to maintain the building?
Well, we didn't.
No, it was, it was already used to
Yes.
make repairs in the building years
Okay.
past.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Oh, okay.
So the hardest part was the litigation?
Yeah, we had a lot of back and forth litigation,
Yes.
a lot of back and forth litigation.
We were lucky enough that we did have a tenant in there that was absorbing some of the cost, but we still had a budget out for 1,800 or 18,000, how much?
18,000, I think.
18,000 a year to maintain the building. Okay, and so that's, even with a tenant in it, so,
We had a lease that was a little,
well, that, we won't even.
we want to go into that.
Okay, so Carolyn, you have something to add to this?
So I would just say that probably every one of our schools has this construction aid hanging over us. And at the time, this is before this consolidation thing was going on, and so the expectation was that if Brookline was going to take over their building, that they were gonna have to pay back the state for that construction aid.
Yeah.
Correct.
I worked on this very hard for the town of Brookline, given that I represent Brookline, and, brought this concern, to the legislature, and eventually, it was incorporated, I believe, in one of these bills, that, that these loans would be, for this aid loan, or whatever you wanna call it, would be forgiven.
So
But-
no, they'd never go back looking for that money to be repaid as we're
Correct.
looking at these kinds of things.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
But there's still the thing of, if the town does not want the responsibility of,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Oh,
Yeah.
completely, I
Taking
understand that
over
piece
the
of it.
building, or if the board doesn't want the responsibility, and nobody's gonna want the responsibility, because if you're not, gonna
No, but I
at
do
least
think
break
that town-
even.
Town people should have an opportunity to choose whether they wanna keep the building or not.
Which is why we
They've
put
been
it
paying the
Right, which
taxes
is why
and
that's
they
there.
should, right, so I think it's the
But
right
that
thing
should,
to do
but that
for
should
these
also be
articles.
brought to your respective towns, that if indeed, if a consolidation does happen.
It certainly can be a bullet point of, as we put the information out, that that's something we're putting in the articles, so people are aware of that. I think it's an important piece.
Joe? I
Yes,
think in relation to your comment, if my recollection is correct from the Red Committee, that this provision of the town able to take title to it for $1 stemmed from the fact that in essence, the taxpayers already
Own
owned
the
or
building.
owned,
Correct.
owned the asset. So it was simply a transfer of title that was going on for $1.
Right.
That makes sense.
And I suppose a town could refuse to take the building if
Surely-
they
certainly
Well, they could.
decided that they didn't
Certainly
want it.
could.
But
Then
then
they
the
can sell their
district would
asset.
have that real estate, they would be declining their asset, the district would have the real estate
Then you go
with
on
the
the-
associated costs, but ultimately, they would have that asset that they
Then you
could
go on the
dispose
market.
of. Right.
Did you have a question, Ashley?
I did. I know you don't want to go into detail, but who was this litigation and the back and forth with? Why was
We
there
had
so
our
much?
attorney,
The town, the Brookline, town and Brookline's attorneys had to be in touch with the board's attorneys, which of course cost the town money and cost the board money.
Because there was difference in opinion what to do with the
It was
building?
negotiation, not litigation, correct?
It was negotiation,
Yes.
but they're the litigators
Okay,
and,
that's what I
you know,
wondered.
They were attorneys.
Right, they were trying to figure out a path.
and they were trying to figure out how it would
And
work, that,
Carolyn-
you know, this could be done, would that get paid off? And
we had to modify clauses and all kinds of things.
Thank you for setting the path. That's
And at
all
the
I wanna
end,
say.
and at the
Thank
end of
you
it all,
for
there was a happy
driving that
ending, it's
first
now
vehicle
in
down that
statute that
road.
you can, you know, that those grants are
I
forgiven.
bet it was.
And
Well, I'm
I-
sure we've all learned from it.
I will
or can
say
learn.
one thing, and I found out from one of my past principals, who's now superintendent in another district. As a school district, you do not want to be a landlord. I will repeat that. As a school district, you do not want to be a landlord.
Okay, we're way off topic here. Let's see if we can, like,
We hope.
find our way back to where we are here. So there's more information that needs to go into this with regard to debt reserve, building value, and all of that. And then I think the new board could probably equalize that. I'm not,
Joe,
Under-
could I ask Drew a question? When you talk about assets, what do you mean by that?
So the school district has purchased everything from a building to computers to a bus in your case that has a value.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're putting in.
Yeah,
You're gonna be putting in all of that, everything, desk, chairs, books, bus. And that has, you know, and looking at it in kind of the per pupil way that we look at everything else, that has a certain number attached to it.
right.
And my concern is that, you know, if Newfane is putting in more than Jamaica, then as we put this to a vote and as we discuss this with our towns, we wanna make sure, I wanna make sure that I can say to the town, look, we're all putting the same amount of skin in this game. We're all investing the same amount. We're not trying to, we need to be. We need to start off with.
You can't make
a level-
Newfane the same size as Wyndham.
yeah, Wyndham's school
I'm
is
not talking
way
this-
smaller, so Wyndham's gonna
necessarily-
bring their school and a bunch of cash?
I'm not talking about, that's why I said like the per pupil method, and that's why I think we need to have a way of doing it. So Newfane has 100 kids and $1 million of asset, and Wyndham has 20 kids and $200,000 worth of asset. Well, that's equal as to what we're bringing to the table. That's what I'm suggesting. We need to have an article that says, how are we gonna come up with that? What does that look like? So that I can explain that to our taxpayers before they vote.
So can I ask a question, sort of, maybe of you, John, or somebody? Sure. Who? If we're all, the major assets and debts are capital,
Buildings.
right? I mean, it's our buildings, you know. For the most part, and I'm not sure, John, whether you can even answer this, but for the most part, most of our schools make a similar investment into their students, I would think, you know, as far as, you know, textbooks and all the other things that you just suggested. So I would think that per pupil, I mean, unless somebody's got a really high spending district, I would think that most of that is already sort of equalized. So then it's a matter of looking at what our our major assets and debt are. And that, I think, you're right, I think we need to be looking at that, and I think we haven't gotten those numbers yet, but we're.
Here's what I'm trying to collect, the information. You can see Dover is the example so far.
Okay,
And these are the kinds of assets that collected for
Right.
Dover. So trying to get that for all the towns, all the schools. I don't think I mean, we'll try to get as much of this in the articles as possible, but I don't think you could put an article in that says each one's gonna do a certain amount, and I think that would be,
Right, that's what I'm worried about.
but that's what the new board could work with the existing school boards on to negotiate some kind of a,
Can you explain those two bottom ones, enrichment and after school?
those are cash. Those are
Oh,
their-
gotcha,
some
gotcha.
programs where
Yep, I
they
got
have
it.
some cash stashed.
Yeah,
in
I
there.
forgot.
Well, and I still haven't wrapped my head around, if you total all this up and you come up with some number that you know, per student or something, that you're putting in X amount per student, at the end of it all, you're not gonna be taking out the same amount per student. I mean, I don't think that one consolidated board is gonna pick a number and every single school is gonna run on the same amount. I mean, they are because it's gonna be averaged over, but there will be schools that, you know, well, that one needs a new roof, we're gonna have to put some money into the capital there. Towns are gonna take out different amounts every year in education costs. It'll be one budget, so it won't really be towns taking it, but, you know, spending's not gonna be dead on equal, so why does the contribution have to be, you know, exactly
Quick
equal?
example, Newfane just spent a lot of money on a project, and they invested a ton of capital. Jamaica, if this goes through, assumes all that investment, because we didn't put any skin in that game. We didn't do a major upgrade. Newfane did. The taxpayers of Newfane took that investment on. They took it on a very short note, invested a lot of money to make that upgrade. Unless we come up with some way to equal that out, I don't see any reason why the taxpayers in Newfane would look at us in Jamaica and say, why aren't you kicking something in?
Well, can I respond to that? Because Newfane also has an offset for that investment that they've made, which is in the process right now still, right?
We
A
all pay
solar,
off.
which is an asset they're bringing, if it all goes through the way they're planning, it'll be an asset that they're bringing, they're bringing that asset to it. There's a kick-off for that. I mean, it's not that Newfane is all paying that how much was it, 300,000 or whatever it was?
Altogether, it was about $500,000.
But they've got that offset, so, you know, there's, what I'm trying to point out is there's nuances with everything, and if we're gonna continue to think as individual communities and individual school districts, we could do this forever. But I think at some point in time, we need to get a good handle on what those major capital assets and debt are, and figure out how we're going to address that. And then, I think we're gonna have to sort of come to the decision that there's gonna be expenses down the road, and there's gonna be, you know, who knows which town it's gonna happen to. But they aren't going to be a town, it's going to be a single school district that has to deal with it.
And each building eventually is gonna need a new heating system
Something.
also, and not that everyone's gonna be able to put a solar field out anymore, because apparently those laws have changed now. That we're like in under, where they wanna just put them on property that you can't develop on anymore. And, so that's a different story. But yes, we're gonna get in right under that line that we were supposed to get in under, and barely by the skin of. I was on the phone actually all day with lawyers from New York and Chicago and everywhere else trying to get a definite answer on that, and we did, so I'm very happy about that. But that's another story, but you go.
Another meeting.
Yeah.
Patty?
No,
you-
I was, ditto on what Emily said.
Okay, Bucky?
Just quickly, it's not necessarily for short-term gain or loss, cost or expense. It's for long-term benefit. And to utilize a phrase from another activity, I think it's all in for every town, and that all in is going to be different in the short term. But in the long run, this town will have a contribution or a withdrawal, and they'll cycle around
We'll grow
over the
into
years.
it.
That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about giving the approval now and getting the bill later. We're talking about approving this merger now and letting the new board figure out what that cost is gonna be later. Or are we saying right from the beginning that we're not gonna worry about it, and we're not going to, everybody's per pupil is going to be the same at the end of this, and we're not gonna at any point after we merge these districts try to figure this asset and debt thing out. Because what I'm afraid of is we're gonna go to the taxpayers and say, hey, we're all in. This new board's gonna come in and they're like, well, we're all in except it's not equal and you guys need to bring in an extra
Sure, that's a.
10 cents this
Thanks
year.
for asking that, because the first thing you said about, at the end of the day, after it's formed, that there's the same tax rate. Yes, there's no different towns have different tax rates because they needed a roof. None of that. It's all one tax rate.
It's like Leland and Gray's budget.
Exactly, exactly.
Except
The other
for
thing is,
all our budget.
this new board does not have authority over the existing boards. They can't tell you, you have to contribute a certain amount of money. They just don't have that authority. What they will have is that the property and the existing assets on June 30, 2017, become their property. But it doesn't tell the boards what they have to do up to that point with those reserves, or even with the buildings, really. So, I don't know if that helps at all, but there's certainly no retroactive gotcha.
And those, the buildings are presumed to be what the buildings are.
Exactly.
And so everybody accepts responsibility for doing what needs to be done to keep all the buildings up or bring all the buildings up to a particular standard. And that's what we all, whoever's on the board accepts as a responsibility, that we think of all the buildings, not just, well, ours is great right now, why would we spend money on Jamaica's building or whatever? That's our building now.
Yeah, one board, they're all the buildings. They would maintain them. Same as each individual board does with its own physical plan now. You know, you know things you can't afford, but they need to happen, and you budget for it and capital plan and figure it out and put it together.
The rest of this group is good with going into this without all the information, then let's move
Well, we'll
forward.
have the reserve and the debt and building value and all of that. This chart will be complete. We just don't have it exactly right now. So that, I mean, obviously that's an item that needs more work.
Yeah.
Joe,
Yeah.
would it not make more sense if the building were still, the individual school buildings were still the property of the town, and the district would be leasing them, not even necessarily for some fee, but just leasing them to operate the educational process of the schools? So then it wouldn't be, the assets would not be really going to this board, into some entity that's removed more or less from the towns, but the towns would still be responsible for the buildings, or at least have ownership of the buildings of their own.
Doesn't the way the law works kind of prevent that?
Yeah, it would be almost like the school district would have to divest itself of their assets. And I know you would run into huge trouble if any school board said, if the Leland and Gray board said, we're gonna sell the Leland and Gray High School to somebody.
We get a better offer from a charter school. See ya.
Because you're still,
The Leland and
you're
Gray
still,
board could do that?
you're still providing, I'm saying that would be a pretty difficult thing to have. That would create all kinds of, talk about litigation.
Well, and I think that, doesn't the law talk about the whole consolidation? The
Yes.
individual school districts would transfer their property in,
That's
and
right.
that's,
And so you're
the
still-
new district would have those assets.
Yes.
I don't think it actually contemplates something like that happening.
No. There would be
But-
roadblocks like crazy to try to
Yeah.
do that.
But isn't the building though property of the citizens of each town?
It's the property of the school
School
district.
district, not the town.
And when the districts merge, it becomes all the property of the merged district.
Yeah.
Which is why Leland and Gray is not the property of town.
Mhm.
Any more financial discussion? We know we need to flesh that out. There's also more language, there's more language around this whole assets and liabilities, and there's obviously more data. Anything else in there?
I have a quick word question, and
Sure.
that is on page 10, third paragraph down from the top chart, third line from the bottom, comprehensiveness there at the end. Is comprehensiveness the right word that we want in that sentence?
Let me tell you what I intended to mean, and the word, we just need a word that says that, the complete package, like we talk about the whole child.
Curriculum?
So,
Talking about the school
the
curriculum?
No,
curriculum, the
no.
materials, the
Yeah.
teachers,
Bigger than that.
the whole package. That's what it's about. So if there's a better word, that's great.
Comprehensiveness of program. Oh, okay.
Are we bringing up any little typos we found?
Sure, what do you got?
Yes.
Second paragraph, first sentence, committee was well award.
Aware.
And then, down after all the shading, another aspect of the committee's work was
To review the assets
To
and
review.
liabilities, not reviewed.
Also, I still see Wyndham in places, not there, but Wyndham
Without
doesn't
a
have a D in certain places.
Okay, we'll have to proof these. We'll have to proof like crazy when we get to a final draft.
It doesn't find it anymore.
Like on this equalized
It's on the
people
chart.
investment chart.
On the
Yes.
chart,
It's on the
okay.
chart.
There, on the line graph, there are some other
Okay.
places.
So I'll check all the
Okay,
charts.
charts
I
and
had
I think it's the
drafts.
charts.
On draft, page 10, the first chart, there's a D
All right,
thing.
so we're oh yeah, it is in a lot of the
Okay,
charts.
great. I'll go through all that.
Yeah. Anything else under financial analysis? Those documents,
Any bullets to add?
bullets to add?
No, just the numbers I got here, just for some reason, I'm assuming this is including your prospective soon-to-be cost savings.
What numbers are
Such
you,
as-
what numbers specifically are
We're
you
looking
talking
right at the
about?
bottom of page 27. Don't want to move on until I get it straight, because apparently some people think I have it wrong.
So page 27's numbers are, as I understand it, the real numbers for the current budget year put into our system.
without,
Without incentives in the first chart and with
But they
incentives on the
include-
second
But they
chart.
now include the savings of,
No.
of a new district.
Those are our current numbers.
Right, but this is as consolidated, if consolidated without the incentives, correct?
I believe.
Yes.
On the bottom of page 27. This is the consolidated numbers without the incentive. That was my understanding, am I correct?
What compares the current versus consolidated?
Yes.
Right, so, no, it does compare both, but this is, the bottom line is, this is, if we were a district right now, this is what we would be, correct? Without the incentives.
Right.
Okay. And does this include, it says it's without the incentives, does it also include the savings of audits? The,
It obviously includes no savings, because of the
Relative
total's
number.
bigger for the unified, but that may be the CLA. I'm gonna have to go back and look and see why those two totals don't match. I think it may be because of the CLA.
It's also only PK to 6.
because
Yes,
it's,
yes,
not
that was,
12.
that's right, that was
So it's
a
not.
big, that was the question that was asked, right.
because
It's
it's,
not what we're
Right.
talking about.
it's interesting because just at the K-6 level, we know that the high school level, we all pay the same amount. So that's not gonna offset, from 7, 8 through 12. We all pay the same amount per student to Leland and Gray, correct? As it stands, I believe?
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. So therefore, at the elementary school level, if we took the 5 operating schools, okay, added the total number of their budgets together, we would come up with one budget number for K through 6, right? Everybody's with me so far?
PK, pre-K.
Okay, I'm sorry. Some districts have pre-K. Some of us send out for pre-K.
It's still part of your budget.
I know, it's still part of our budget, but it's not, supposedly it's not a big part of
That's on page 28, Ken.
Okay. Right, no, that's, okay, so what are you telling me is on page 28? That's with the incentives, or no?
That's just the total spending.
On the bottom. Right, is the total
Second
spending.
line is the
So
total
if you add up the, well, okay, we have to say 4 towns because you combine New Brooks. I take Newfane and Brookline separately only because they're separate towns, but that's okay. And you add these 4 budgets up, you'll come up with a grand number. With that grand number, you take the number of students, okay, because it's equalized pupil spending. Everybody follow me?
Keep going.
You take the number of students in that town, find out what percentage that is, take that percentage of the total spending for the 4 school districts or 4 operating buildings or budgets, and you will come out with a number for each town, how much they will be paying more per pupil and how much they will be paying less per pupil. That's a simple math formula. Is everybody following it? It does get a little tricky, right? And when I do that with Newfane's numbers, I don't come up with 39,000. I come up with 99,000 something, pretty close to $100,000, because Newfane would increase by $750 per student. So I don't come up with $39,000. I don't know how we're coming up with $39,000.
I can send you the numbers. It's more complicated than
It
that.
is more complicated.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, if you take the 2 Newfane and Brookline numbers right now and you divide them by the amount of kids you have, does that come out with the accurate equal, the number you're paying per pupil? Because that's exactly how you just explained it. If you add 783,000 and 305,000 and you divide it by 113 kids, does that give you your per pupil cost in Newfane right now?
No.
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 So, and that's just how you explained it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that doesn't work.
No, it should work.
But
that
it doesn't work if you
work.
take the numbers now.
No, if you take the numbers now, it won't work. And the reason why it won't work is because you'll find out it's about $750 more per student.
But the
If you
line's
do it
right
with these
there.
numbers.
Okay.
But if you take the current numbers, it also doesn't work, which means that really it's much more complicated than the simplified method you just outlined. The whole calculation is much more simple
Not if you just take.
add the budget
not if you
numbers,
just
add
take-
the
not if you
kids.
just take each town.
Okay, so take your current town budget for Newfane and your current town budget for Brookline. Add them together, divide by the pupils, like Heidi said, 113, and that comes out to your current per pupil cost, correct?
No,
It has to, because if your formula
If you
works
take-
for
it-
future, it works for present.
no. At present, if you take the total number of students from Newfane, Newfane is approximately, I want to say 60-some% of the joint board budget. The taxpayers from Newfane pay X amount, taxpayers from Brookline pay X amount per pupil to cover the whole budget number of 2 million and change, okay? Because we have to make up that money for our budget, right? If we have a budget of $2 million and we have 100 students, let's say, okay, it's 20,000 per student, and they have, Newfane has 50% and Brookline has 50% of the students, they each pay half of that amount, which would be $1 million apiece. If it were that simple that it was half and half. But it's not. It's fluctuated because it's the cost per pupil. And they pay X amount per pupil to attend Newbrook. Newfane residents pay X amount to send Newfane students to Newbrook.
So So they're not really consolidated. There's not any cost sharing between between Newfane and Brookline?
Well, I think our numbers per pupil would argue that fact.
But residents of different towns pay different amounts per pupil?
No, we pay
In
the
those
same
two?
amount per pupil. It might be off by $1.
$1.
Oh, it's off by $1, and the reason it's off by $1 is because it's CLA.
Because your CLA is higher in.
Right, so we pay $1 more per student.
I still don't see it, but anyway, John, you'll get him the convoluted formula that the state actually uses for these per pupil costs.
But in any case, aside from Jamaica and Townsend, the other towns, actually, there's an increase under this unified plan.
Without incentives,
And
sure.
without coming up
So,
with.
so I think, the problem I'm having here is, I just wonder what this means, We've got charts and numbers,
Not a lot.
but yeah.
Well, for Wyndham's case, for instance, it means that the small school grant that Wyndham gets is spread across all the towns now.
Mm-hmm.
And the small school grants that other towns get are spread across all the
Same
towns.
with all.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's one of the big factors there.
Well, Newfane and Brookline don't have a small schools grant.
You would after this. You get part of Wyndham,
That's
you get
right.
part of
Part of
Jamaica's.
Wyndham's, Townsend's, and
But,
Jamaica's.
but it won't be Newfane getting it, it'll be everybody getting it.
That's right.
That's
Right,
the point.
it'll be the
I
whole
mean, and
district.
I know it's hard to shift from thinking about your individual school district or your community or your
But it's
school.
but eventually that
but
small
it
school
will
grant's gonna go
all
away
be
anyway after so
everybody's.
many years, correct?
That's what we just talked about earlier, and you said so far, there's no plans for that. Will it probably happen? Probably down the road.
The fool me, it happens as soon as we did it.
But now, I have a question.
Sure.
So say if, 5 years from now, 5 special needs kids move into Wyndham. We share all that cost, right?
Correct.
Wyndham does not have to absorb that intense cost.
This is no longer
alone.
Wyndham.
Right, because it's no longer Wyndham, it's
Right.
the
It's
larger
just-
The big
piece.
board.
Yeah.
The big board.
So it can go either way, just by the,
Right.
Right,
Locked
everybody
up.
has those years where you get hit really hard, and it's been hard as a small school to absorb all those special ed costs. But that is definitely an advantage for all of our towns, is we're sharing that, so it's not gonna be a big hit in a small number of people.
or you have a family with 5 kids and they move out of your town.
Right, right.
That's a huge impact on these small schools.
Mm-hmm.
So these are points in favor of the consolidation there.
No, because
So,
you still have-
anything else with the financial stuff? We've identified the places that need more work. We can move on to transportation, perhaps?
What page is that?
That's page 13 of 28. And basically, it just, we have an option here, it will be responsible or may be responsible.
There was talk last time about whether you wanted to sort of put language in here directing the new district to provide transportation. Let's get up there.
Historically, we have, so I think we'd keep going on that, wouldn't we?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it adds much really to.
You have a question?
I was just gonna say, I think this is the same language we had it the last time, or very similar to it. If the concern is that, which we should all, this concern it would be to the future and to now, right? Any of us can say we don't wanna provide transportation anymore because it's not really required by law. But of course, we all know that we all provide transportation, and for good reason. But can it be worded in such a way to make people more comfortable, such as, it is the intent? Or something like that the school district would provide transportation for all?
Sure.
That's the legal way of saying we don't have to do it.
Well, I mean,
Okay, let's get real.
But Ken, I'm not saying, we're not changing the legal responsibility, because that's the same before or after, we're still just talking school district. But I understand what Carolyn's saying, I wasn't here, but I watched it.
Yeah, now, this is an issue that I think is really important, and especially given that Wyndham is geographically necessary, and it's out in the boonies, and I've got people living 5 miles on the other side of the school, the Wyndham Elementary, from the high school. I think I would want, as a representative from Wyndham, I think I need to be sure that we're going to be, because it's a challenge, you know, to provide transportation.
Right.
And I think that I need to be assured that the kids in Wyndham are going to be transported.
So how about, because we can't, if we were a merged district, for example, we couldn't treat some of our kids differently than we treat others.
Exactly right.
So, the point, I guess, I would want to make sure is that it is the intent to, as long as we are providing, I mean, we'd be going against the law if we did it differently, but if we wanted to say, as long as we have agreed that we're going to provide transportation, all children will be, you know, the same opportunities for transportation will be provided across all communities. It's hard for me to think about it like that, because honestly, we will be one school district, and right now, it would be really weird for us at Leland and Gray, a merged district, to say, well, we're gonna provide transportation for everybody but Wyndham. I think it would be really, we couldn't even do it.
You couldn't do that, no.
Right, so I guess I'm,
Well, there's a sentence here, it is expected that the new school district will continue to provide transportation for students.
right, I think that that's important.
And is that transportation going to be their bus and their their insurance, and their bus is part of their budget now, which would become the big board's expense, which it's all ours, which is, don't get me wrong, I'm good with
The big board would have
this.
to look at whether could they get a contract that was cheaper, and they would find the most efficient way to transport kids.
I don't
No,
think
you cannot get a
they're not gonna find it
Well,
cheaper.
we aren't gonna
Apply for
figure out
waivers
the
every
We aren't
year.
gonna have to figure that out. I mean, the big board would look at it, whatever made the most sense,
Joe,
they would do it.
I understand, but I'm just saying that I want to make sure that, you know, and we're
Transportation is
about to
provided.
purchase a bus. It's going to be delivered in December, and so, you know.
Does that cover it?
I think so. Heidi?
I just have one concern, because there's a lot of areas in Townsend that does not have bus service. We only go up the main roads.
Sure.
There's a lot of back roads, and I don't want to get into a situation where the wording makes it necessary that we start traveling on some of these back roads that would be quite hazardous for a bus during the wintertime.
It doesn't
So
happen
does that
because
mean-
our contract with the bus company states they do not go on dirt roads.
Okay,
But even, they don't go on all blacktop roads either right now, so, you know, I mean, they don't go out the South Wardsboro Road where I live, but we do provide transportation, so that's part of a contract, not
I
part
would
of
say,
a.
like, could you add reasonable transportation, or some wording that does not put out the expectation or the interpretation that
Do
we
you think that
have to
is?
provide all students transport?
That
No,
sentence
but
that
I'm
he added.
afraid, no, because it sounds like from this moment that we're looking at it, we are continuing current transportation
Yeah.
needs. But 10 years down the road,
But that's not limiting either increasing or decreasing the routes.
it's not, but could someone look at that wording and interpret, well, I live on this and such a town, and it's expected that we're gonna provide transportation for that student?
Go ahead, Karen.
So we don't provide door-to-door transportation for
No.
all the kids.
Okay.
We provide transportation to the best of our ability, meeting a time schedule. Sometimes parents will come and ask for, you know, service to change and come up closer to their homes, and we accommodate that when we can. But the notion that a bus isn't gonna travel on a dirt road, that doesn't work for Wyndham.
Because you have dirt roads that are
We
traveling
have-
on, right?
Yeah, and a lot of dirt
Yeah.
roads. So, anyway. Ken, did you say that your buses don't go on dirt roads?
No, we actually had an instance in Newfane once that we had a complaint that one of the buses was on a dirt road, which was completely ridiculous because it had nothing to do with picking up students. It had to do with the maintenance thing, and
So as we establish the intent of the committee, and that we're doing that here, I think it's clear that, you know, if Wyndham is gonna be part of this transportation thing, the buses will need to travel on dirt roads.
Can we put the word reasonable between provide and transportation?
we can argue for
really
days about what reasonable
careful
means.
about getting too detailed around
There's
this.
going to be a larger number of students that live up on Townsend Acres, you know, and there are a handful that, you know, go to Townsend, but if you've come down Townsend Acres in the middle of winter, I don't know how a bus is going to travel that road. I mean, as you know.
I think the word reasonable.
I don't think the buses go to Townsend Acres.
No, it doesn't, that's what I'm saying, I mean,
I
it
don't
would
think they
be,
would start.
yeah,
I don't know.
no, that's my question.
But that
is-
would
is
be-
how do you,
We're beating this up.
My thinking is if you say, if you put this, will continue to provide, that
It
that
implies
speaks to
we're
what you're doing right now.
Exactly.
Mhm.
That's what the
More
word
than
continue.
adding
Yeah.
other kinds of
Yeah,
qualifiers.
Yes.
I
I
think,
think
agree.
though that, it also creates the illusion that we are providing everything that's being asked at this time, and we will continue to do everything that's being asked.
I don't believe
No,
it.
we're not.
As Carolyn said,
If
they
I may
changed
jump
something.
off
We make a judgment
of
about
John's
what we can
words
do.
here, we could throw in that, all districts will, well, it'll be one district at that time, but all towns will have,
All students?
no, all towns that have transportation will continue transportation in an equitable manner.
This is about students,
No.
not about towns.
Oh, no, it's okay, because equitable doesn't mean it's equal, so it's okay.
Yeah.
yes, Anita.
Can you, as a member of the public, I'm not here as the media person at the moment, listening to this, couldn't you just say something like, the new board will assume responsibility for negotiating the contracts for transportation to the towns participating in the new district?
You can, but that doesn't
Therefore-
mean what she's asking for.
Therefore, the new board is gonna figure out transportation when the time comes.
Before we all go a whole lot farther on this, Carolyn, you're the one with the biggest concern here. Why don't you give us the language that makes you, you know, sleep easily at night?
I think, I don't know that you can put the language I don't know if the language that would give me great comfort would be comfortable for everybody here.
Well, why
I'm
don't you
just
give us
stating-
the language
I-
that
I'm
would
just-
give you
I
the
am-
comfort?
So I want to make sure that the children of Wyndham are transported in much the same way as they are now.
Okay, so what in the paragraph that's there makes you think that somehow the children of Wyndham would be transported differently? Or that any children would be transported
well-
any differently than they currently are?
Calm down, Joe.
No, I'm just,
I'm trying to, it is expected that that added language gives me comfort. I'm just putting it out there that I don't want kids to be, you know, there's a family over on the north side of town that had 4 children and the mom didn't drive.
you're missing the point here of
No,
of
I'm
this.
not missing the point.
You are missing the point.
Maybe
The
you're
point-
missing the point.
No, I understand your concerns about the transportation and the issues and the family here and that everybody gets to continue to move. The point I'm trying to get to is how do we solve that? And when I ask you for the language that gives you comfort, you
She
talk
said
to
that
me
word
about,
gave her comfort.
but that's not quite enough and you still worry about that family that's 5 miles out.
It is
Let's just get it
expected-
drafted.
It is expected that the blah, 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 LGBT or whatever, will continue to provide transportation for students.
It's a gender thing, isn't it?
Well, I actually have something about that. We need to come up with a.
Can we
so
keep the
funny.
tone civil a little
Yeah.
bit more? I find this really
Uncomfortable.
shocking.
So, I'm sorry, we interrupt you without laughter.
That's okay.
What
I
do you
think
have?
laughter is good.
What do you have?
I think that, you know, when we create language in Montpelier, we put language down, but there's also intent that's established by the recordings that occur. And so I'm just putting it out there for the intent, is I would like to see our kids continue to
So I
be
agree with
provided
you.
with transportation. So if that works, great.
I agree with you, and the only reason why I'm comfortable with that is because of that word continue. That's the
Yep.
intent to me.
Yep.
See, and I agree with you too. I think nothing should change. But I don't, and I think that says right there, we're gonna continue to do what we're doing and the kids will continue to be transported. My understanding from what you were saying though is that that wasn't quite enough.
Well, I'm not saying that it's not quite enough, but other people think it's too much.
No, I'm fine with that.
right, does anybody have any problem with the language as it's up there now?
I still think it's gonna cause problems, but.
Can I throw something out there real quick, just off the top of my head? All bus stops will remain.
No.
It depends on the.
No, wait.
We move the bus stops every year.
No, wait a minute. You didn't let me finish, you threw my whole train right off the tracks, just like you did, you just threw the bus right onto the dirt road here, Joe.
That's what I'm here for.
Okay. All bus stops will remain in effect as needed.
I still think that's way too micromanagement for a board.
That's part of a contract between the district and a.
Citizen
As
Paris?
a citizen and a bus driver, I would point out that the bus driver system is regulated and there are competent coordinators, are there not?
Well, our school board determines our bus route every year.
Yeah, well, like in
Maybe.
Marlboro, one person interacts with all the parents and sets all that stuff up and is trained by the state in that process. So it doesn't occur for me like there's a huge problem with this, that it could like explode and the dam would bust and everybody go bankrupt.
Well, the school, the school board in Wyndham determines the bus stops. We base it on safety and visibility and all sorts of stuff and need. And the question, is this larger board gonna know this?
Yes,
Absolutely.
It seems that continuing the service that we now have for our students is the important piece here.
I just
The
don't want.
LNG TED will be responsible for continuing the coordination of transportation with and so on.
And that's what we've got, right?
We
That's
want to
good.
stay away from
And,
blue.
I bring it up because bus transportation is not required by the state of Vermont. Budget crunch comes and, we decide, well, maybe we're not gonna do bus service for anity.
That will fill in your school board meeting.
They would have pitchforks and torches.
I remember us cutting it in Newfane, I was on the Newfane board once, we put it right back.
Well, good.
All right.
It's a long time ago.
To families, because other states have, you pay to ride the bus, right?
So we're good with transportation? Thank
Well,
you.
you can move on, you're not good.
Okay, so Article 9, page 14, composition of the board.
This is where you wanted to add two at-large members, so I rewrote
Right.
this for the two at-large members.
Unless someone has an issue with that, we can just, yes, Buck?
Question?
Yeah.
This would be a possibility that Newfane or any town could have their number of members plus two.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's why everybody
Would it
should
make
vote.
sense to add the language that not more than one from any town for the at-large? So they get spread around, at least to two towns?
How would you do that, though, when everybody's voting on all the people, on those two
So
people?
if you got two from Newfane, with the highest number, you throw out the lowest of the two and give it to the next one?
Do you have a problem with Newfane having 5 board members?
Or with Brookline having 3, the same as Newfane. I mean,
Yeah.
I am comfortable with that. Because at-large members are supposed to be representing all of the
Yes.
communities. I don't care where they come from.
And then Newbrook would have a majority of the board if that ever happened.
Well,
Just pointing that out to y'all.
and
Just throwing it out there,
it
because that's what I
changes
just.
everything if that's the way we're gonna look at it. I would hope that
But
at-large
there-
members won't be looking at it
Members would
from.
be 6.
But they're under an obligation to think of it as, these
wouldn't
are
think
all
that-
our schools.
All right, so, I'm comfortable with it the way it is. Does anyone else have, do they wanna start adding to that?
I just want to point out, I could not imagine what the ballot would look like for the first year. Because if you have, you know what I mean? I mean, seriously, think about it, because.
We don't have to think about it.
We don't have to worry about that.
Well, people have
No,
to
we don't,
run.
no, we don't have to worry about it. Just when everything goes through, we'll just throw it all into the fan, whatever works out, right? Okay, good. All right, I'm good, let's go.
people have.
Moving on, Joe.
Ballot is-
I don't know.
Moving on, no, you wanna move on, we'll move on.
You have to run for it, you have to put your name on a ballot.
Okay,
So you have to have enough
there's
people
one
for-
opening in Brookline.
Guys, do we
Four
really
people
have to
run.
design the ballot for
Yeah.
articles
No,
we don't even have drafted
well, Joe,
yet?
Joe, I'm just pointing out that this is gonna be something down the road. You're gonna have I just got a question here, I'm just gonna answer. You got 4 people from Brookline that wanna run for one position. There's 2 open positions that are floaters,
But everybody votes on that.
but everybody votes on that. So how do you do that? And then Townsend has,
I believe you would take out
majority.
papers, and you would take out nomination papers as either the representative
As an
from the town
at-large
or as an at-large member
Yeah.
and run your campaign. And if you were the second highest vote getter from Brookline, if you were running for the Brookline seat, you would not then get an at-large seat. But that would be, policy that we'd have to figure out, and there may even be election law that deals with
There
it.
is.
There is a law.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
so you would have to sign up for an at-large, petition for an at-large. And to petition for an at-large, would that person have to petition all 5 towns?
No, they don't, the law or the guidelines. I don't
Well,
know if
no, they're not representing Brookline, they're representing all
I'm
5
not talking
towns.
about
But
Fair
they
Play,
just
let me
have to get
finish.
percentage
Okay.
of all the voters.
Right.
They just have to do it in any one town. Any one of the towns that have the vote of the at-large puts them on all the ballots.
Right.
And
They
they
file
have to
in
be a
one town.
percentage probably.
Because
of
that's
all
why
the
I checked with the state about
Yeah.
that, because I was concerned about that, how that would work.
All righty,
It'll work.
I'll move on.
We ready?
Yeah.
Page 17, Article 15, closing a school.
So what this is, can I ask? What this is saying is that
Right now it
there's one
says,
more, we have decided as a committee that it's one more than the law requires for the first 5 years, because the law says you can't close a school for 4 years, right? So we've gone
Okay, we
and
gave
said
them
5
5.
years now. That's, I just want to clarify, so we've decided about the 5th year, that's fine.
I don't think, we discussed this at the last meeting, anything that requires unanimous anything, I don't think
wasn't-
we can have unanimous.
I think we
Oh, I
discussed
say let
this
it be.
though.
Yeah.
I think we discussed this as being a little bit different. I remember that discussion from last time, didn't we, Joe? As in,
We said
as
5 years.
allowing a unanimous vote from the board of this unified district to close that school?
Following the 5 years.
Following the 5
Yeah,
years.
5 years is just when nobody can close a school.
I think that
Then
the unanimous thing we
after-
talked about was budget.
What's
Voting
the
on the
reasoning
budget, that
behind
couldn't
that
be
5
discussed
years or
about
4
budget.
years? What's the
That's where it
reasoning
was.
behind the board not being able to close a school for that amount of time, but then all of a sudden being able to do that?
That language came out of Act 153, the 4 years. I don't know where the 5 years came from. It was
Did the
us, I
state
guess, 'cause I missed the
elaborate
last
why
meeting.
all of a
No,
sudden
her question
after-
was,
Where
why
did it
does
come from?
why does it get the change?
Well,
Right?
goes
No,
to
no,
the
no,
she's
why,
asking-
what makes the board, what qualifies the board after a certain amount of time to then close the school? What changes over the course
Or
of
not.
4 or 5 years?
They get an understanding of
Things different.
how to run the school.
Well, it's not just that, it's that circumstances might change during the time. What if, Jamaica all of a sudden had, 3 kids left in it? I mean,
3 kids.
those can, don't hang on any of my examples, but I'm just saying, things can change.
Yeah.
Probably they're not going to change significantly in the first 4 years, but they might. All they're saying is if they do, you can't close in the first 4 years. And Carolyn, you were sitting up there under 153, I was not, but I am quite familiar with that language.
I don't like this language. I really feel very strongly that, that the only entity that should be able to close a school are the voters of that town. And, I think, I actually look forward to, I don't really look forward to it, but I'll be interested to see if one of these boards does try to close a school, because constitutionally, I think it's an issue. So,
Might be.
I am not going to be able to support this if there isn't language to the effect that voters have to vote to close a school.
Go ahead.
Just a question for you, John. In reviewing the articles of other, because I know a lot of people are developing articles around the state, and many have already passed articles. Is this common? Or is the town, vote
There's
of
not a
town
common, there's a whole variety of
Okay,
things.
so can you just give me sort of an example of some of the other varieties?
One of them is just that the board can close the school.
Yeah.
Some are only the first part, that towns can't be closed unless a town says so.
For the entire length of the articles?
Yeah, I mean, if that's where it's in there. Now, I will tell you, I mean, just that, the strongest language would be language that is also included in the articles that are actually voted on at the poll. Because the citizens don't vote on every one of these articles, they vote on just a couple of things.
Right.
And so that's number one. Number two, those articles can be changed in the future by a vote of the total population.
It has to be
So,
the whole
yeah.
school district. It's not the board then who changes the articles, it's the community,
the ones that are voted on by the community.
the school district community.
So that's just something to keep in mind.
So we can put language.
One second. Bucky, you had a question?
If we leave this language as it is now, I don't think we've learned anything from our effort on the red.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, because there was considerable sentiment to support Carolyn's situation, or statement, that the towns wanted to have control over closing their school and not leaving it to the central board.
But the red language had simply the first paragraph where it took a positive vote of the citizens and never had the second paragraph where after 5 years the boards could do it.
There was a reason that it had that language because
But that language, you're saying that
meetings in the towns, that sentiment was.
You're saying that we didn't learn, but we left, in the red articles, there was no way to close a school without an affirmative vote of the town. Exactly what Carolyn's
That's
saying
right.
she likes. And you're saying that we didn't learn from that. I'm confused what you mean.
Because of your second paragraph.
But Wyndham pulled out of the red and didn't support it with that language in there the first time. So I'm confused.
Well, Wyndham pulled out of it because we really couldn't see any kind of increased opportunity for education in this plan, which is something I would like to continue to see discussed. I'd like to know really what this increased opportunity for education is going to be. And I don't want it to be just happy talk.
Okay, so you're advocating then to remove the second sentence about after the first 5 years of operation? Patty, you had something?
Oh, I don't know. It's gone.
I'm sorry.
So that means, if we did that, that means after 5 years.
It would still be the town.
Oh, okay, the towns. I wouldn't mind having that the towns have to vote to close the school.
Drew?
I think it's gonna put the board in a very tough spot.
What is? The language
When,
here?
if the board has no ability to close the school, and 5 years pass, and the board no longer has a purpose for that school, but the town won't let go of it, I think it puts the board in a very difficult position. It goes back to where we started the conversation with money, which is now we're gonna have carrying costs of a school building that's not really a school, but we can't get rid of it because it's a school. And what do we do with that? I think it creates problems.
But Drew, don't you think that if it came down to it, financially, you'd have a good argument to all the townspeople that letting go of that school would impact their taxes, bottom line? Don't you think that would be enough to sway a town to vote to close it?
But it doesn't impact just that town, it impacts all of us then.
It does, but that town will also be affected directly, bottom line.
You could also say that the board couldn't close, or that the town board would have to close a school that is still in operation. As soon as the school is no longer in operation, that might be a different ballgame right there.
You could put language in potentially to address your concern. I think it's important that we investigate all of the possibilities. We talk about all of the, unintended consequences, and I think that could probably be addressed. Up here, I'm not crazy about the first clause, for the first 5 years of operation. I think in order to close the existing elementary school, it needs to be a vote of the citizens of the respective town. Not for the first 5 years, forever.
But so then, to further what you just said, however, if a school building is not being used for educational purposes, the board could then decide to close that
Yes.
school. Or
Yeah,
sell
that
it.
would be fine with me.
Can you two, that you just agreed on something that I don't get at all, so can you talk about it a little more?
So if you're taking out, there's no time limit to the town choosing to close a school, but then, however, if because we have school choice, families have chosen to send their children elsewhere, so that there's no actual students attending a school, then the board, the unified board, could choose to shut that school down and, without a vote.
We can't.
Heidi's trying to address.
She's saying if there
Okay.
is
I
no.
heard what you're saying now.
Adding that language in.
And that sounds good to you?
Yeah. If the building, if there are no kids going to school, as Drew laid out his scenario, if there are no kids going to that school, I think then, let the board close the school.
How do you decide that?
Yeah, what if there's two?
Because there are no kids
If
going
there,
there.
if after a year of, I think you'd have to put a time frame in, because someone could say, are you just leaving it open 1 year and then maybe next year people will choose to go to that school?
What
I
if one
mean,
family's still living there and wants their kids to be in that community? at that
Wyndham
school?
has 14 kids.
What if 10 decide to go to Townsend, there's 4 kids left?
Right.
How do you,
Yeah,
what number
I
do
mean-
you decide?
I mean, I
Put this.
that's the thing, if there's still some kids there, you wouldn't be able to, but if everybody made that choice, which is under Drew's scenario, there's nobody going to the school. You don't have to put that wording in, but you can just then leave it as the towns have to vote to close the school.
I'm confused because I thought when we put the unanimous vote of the board, it meant every member had to, including your Wyndham representatives, had to close it. So I felt that that was our Townsend representative or your Wyndham representative could say, no, we're not closing it, and that represents
Well,
your
I don't
school
know
not
who that
closing.
representative's, that Wyndham representative's gonna be.
Right, but we don't know
They will
how
be
many
elected
kids
by
we're
the
gonna
town.
have in 6 years, 7 years. So I mean, we're talking all these what ifs that we could be here forever trying to talk and figure out all the what ifs. And I think we have to trust the people that we vote in. You get to vote in
Okay,
your
I think it's
representative
second.
for your thing. And I think the unanimous, meaning every single member of that board has to say yes, close it.
Well, I think that's fine, but I'd still want the additional language that really the voters of a town have to close a school.
But you just said that you said it was okay if we did the unanimous to vote to close it. Now you're saying.
And
Mhm.
if,
So is this
if
what you
there's,
said?
if there's a unanimous vote of the board, I think that there needs to be a vote of the people as well, of the town.
Even if there's no kids in the school? I'm
Well,
looking at that highlighted
Right.
section.
A Heidi's language.
Yeah, that was definitely what I said, and I thought that was based on what you were saying.
Yep.
So if there are no kids in the school, do I still have to have the town vote to close the school?
No, I mean, that's what I
Right.
was, my.
Right.
Operation.
And that would be during that budget year, there's no students there, the board could decide that it was no longer going to operate that school in the future.
I would hope so, because what are they gonna do when they get to school that day? The teachers are gonna show up and do what? I mean, I
Well,
would hope the board could close the school at that point.
Yeah. No, I think
kinda
it's,
like that.
I think your scenario is highly unlikely, Drew, but I appreciate it and respect it, and, it could, I guess it could happen, yeah. So we need to have a contingency, and I like Heidi's idea.
All right, so are we comfortable with this
Want
language
to try
then?
living with this for a while?
Yeah, let's live with this for a while.
Okay.
You will, I'm sorry, I just wanted to ask you, because this, I mean, I don't have a paper copy and I'm not writing it down, you'll send all this to us?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Will you do that like immediately afterward?
Sure.
Because that would be really helpful to me
Sure.
to have it, what we talked about tonight. Thank you.
You might have to change the third paragraph too, where we define what closing the school means. Maybe. Okay, so, next one is the elementary school choice and pre-K, which is on our pages 17 and 18. We've added the language about kids being able to be mobile within the larger district.
I think if we do that, this part that I just put in blue goes away.
I'm sorry, say that again,
Yeah.
please?
Yeah, you don't need that part.
Yes.
Mal.
I'd also like to point out, and with the pre-K stuff, you guys that have a pre-K program in school, do the pre-K kids take the bus, any of them?
Yes.
Yes, okay,
4-year-olds, right? 4-year-olds. We don't have 3-year-olds in our school.
okay. All right. The reason I'm asking that question is because we do not provide transportation for 4-year-olds to preschool.
Because they don't go to your
Because
school.
they don't go to yours.
Well, so what? If your 4-year-olds get to ride a bus, no, I'm just,
But you just answered your own
So-
question.
right.
So let that,
So are we now, is the district now going to be liable to take the Newfane and Brookline children and bring them here, there, down to Brattleboro and everywhere else because,
I believe last meeting, we had a discussion that transportation would not include, there may be school choice, but transportation wouldn't necessarily take students to different schools.
right.
That the bus would still run the same buses in the same manner, but that we wouldn't necessarily be transporting a kid who lived in Wyndham who wanted to go to Jamaica or a Jamaica student that wanted to go to Townsend.
That would be a nightmare.
That being said, should we
Well,
go back to transportation and put that phrase in there for our intent?
Right.
Well, and I
School
think
choice
that
is
might be an
more
issue
responsible.
that the larger board ends up looking at in early on, that, do they develop a transportation hub where all the buses come in and then all the buses go back out to allow that sort of choice transportation? Are
Well,
we saying that it should happen and that we expect it? No, but it might be an issue that they look at. Same thing with what you're saying with the pre-K transportation. The article that we just spent a lot of time hashing out with transportation basically says things are gonna continue the way they are, and then
but
they
what
can
I'm
get
saying is, I don't want to
changed.
mess with that. Let's leave it as it is. I'm not going to open that up again for you. Okay, what I'm saying is, when you put in pre-K, just put a little note in there that says schools that do not have an in-house pre-K will not provide transportation, is all I'm asking.
But what if
But
the
they're why the
board
kids
decides
to
they want to?
One, yeah. If
What?
one
What
school
if the board
gets-
decides they want to?
Yeah. If one school gets.
Well,
it,
then,
they all-
okay, well, you're supposed to be trying to save costs here with this,
What if it
all
doesn't
this
cost
magic here.
anymore?
You're-
What if it doesn't cost anymore?
Oh, it's not gonna cost to
What
get
if-
two kids down
What if the bus is
to,
going right by Timpson Hill and it's gonna work? I mean, I'm just trying to give you an example of why, how could we tie the hands of future board in that way? What if they
Well,
wanted to provide and it was either,
okay, and how many
Free or
buses on
reasonable?
our routes go to Brattleboro at the time that
We
the,
aren't
not our
saying
problem.
well, I have kids that are in Brattleboro preschools. I have kids over in Dover that are in preschools, that our bus routes do not handle. I'm just, then, to avoid all this, I just asked that a simple sentence be put in there, and I'm getting a hard time here.
But that's based on that, I was just curious.
Every time I bring something, I'm trying to get out of this whole thing right here and just say, Can we please put in a sentence that says if it's not an in-house pre-K, that we are not that we do not provide we're not obliged to provide transportation. That's all I'm asking, because it's what we do now, and if we do it your guys' way and include all our 4-year-olds on buses, it's going to be an added expense to the new board, and I do not want that to happen.
Maybe there's a cost savings in there, Ken.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe, and we'll run a cost analysis on that if you would like, but I don't think we're gonna find it there, but I love wishful thinking, thank you.
Sorry.
We just did a lot. Can we just tighten that language and then move down?
Yeah, I wanna see it again.
Yeah, okay,
The
so
families.
we're all talking about, we're all still working on both assignments and pre-K.
Let's start at the top with.
Yeah.
Question?
Certainly, sorry.
First sentence, is that forever and ever? What if we want to change the utilization of the schools that we have? For example, utilize our local schools for pre-K through 4 and group towns for 5 through 6, or something different.
Which one you talking about?
Students in
Will this allow it?
will be served
Well,
by the same schools that currently exist.
That means the same physical buildings, not necessarily the
It
same.
doesn't speak to the town necessarily.
Yeah, it doesn't, it's not meant to say that if you currently go to Townsend, you're gonna stay in Townsend. It just means that those buildings are gonna continue to exist. We're not building a new building, we're not closing a building. Go ahead, Drew.
One of the suggestions that came out of the appendix from Newfane was a suggestion that maybe we move 6th grade students out to Leland and Gray. The way this is written here,
You wouldn't have
that
that
was
opportunity.
actually listed as a possible educational opportunity.
Yes, it was, and it wasn't listed by
So-
Newfane, I don't believe.
This takes that.
So the
It was
question
brought
is
up
does this
that-
eliminate that possibility?
Right, should we be discussing that? Because here it says 7 through 12, and that was as part of the opportunities listed, specifically stated.
Well, then we're gonna throw our
There's, the part in gray does say that students in grades K through 6 could choose the school they would attend, but that could include Leland and Gray.
Could you do K through 12?
Uh,
No, because they can't choose.
Well,
Yeah,
but,
I think the
but
point is you have to be-
configuration.
Yeah,
If the configuration changed and they were 6th grade
students
students,
in grades
Some schools
I'm just wondering
K
if you,
through
if
12
you made it more
here.
general.
Yeah.
Yes, students in grades K through 12 will be served by the same schools that currently exist. That
Right.
leaves it wide open.
Yes, nice.
Yep, we have to look at the park.
So maybe we don't need this last
I don't
line
think
at
you
all.
do. I would get rid of it.
Just get rid of it altogether. And, yeah.
Yeah, that solves it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we
Oh,
definitely.
there's the priority there for this, for
So
students
does that
serving
first sentence
towns.
pertain
Those
to the
are
first
students.
year of
Those students
operation?
residing in town will be denied access to.
I'm sorry, what, Bucky?
Does the first sentence pertain to the first year of operation or in
Focus on that last
2050 as
sentence.
well?
Oh, this is, yeah, this is initial. The
This is
article
initial.
requires you to put initially. So I'm gonna put initial school assignments.
There you go.
That's really what it asks you to put in the articles. How are you gonna start?
Okay, so we okay with the choice article, folks?
Yep.
All right. The pre-K article,
Yeah, it's just part of this article, but yes.
right.
The language.
Basically says everything's gonna stay the same for the first year, and then the new board will have to make decisions about pre-K opportunities.
And just for clarification, I asked John, and he did talk to the superintendent about this
Yeah.
particular wording before he put it in.
This was Bill's recommendation.
Because I think at the last meeting, we weren't sure if we could include pre-K.
What to do
Okay.
about it, yeah.
Right.
So, we know, Ken has voiced his opinion on this language. Anyone else?
I
Drew?
think it's good.
So, just to be clear, this means the current pre-K programs that are running in our schools will stay running in our schools based on the way this is written.
The prior
For
year,
the
whatever
for the first
year, the
year,
prior
yes.
year.
So for 1 year, we get pre-K, but after that, we don't know what it's gonna look like.
No, the pre-K is still, a
The
lot hasn't
board
changed
would
from
have a
pre-K.
decision about
But it
that.
may not be run out of our school system. So in Jamaica, we have full-day pre-K. This says for year one, we get full-day pre-K. After year one.
Everybody does, all families do there at Jamaica.
Right. But after year one, it could go to Newfane's model of 10 hours.
Or 12.
Or 12 hours,
Your
whatever it
current
is.
board could make that decision right now
Right.
anyways.
But I just wanna make sure,
Yeah.
as I go to explain this to people,
Yeah.
that's what this says.
Yeah.
Yes. It does allow the board to make some changes to pre-K after the first year, depending on what the needs are. Now, pre-K
But it
is-
also allows for taking advantage of another town's pre-K. Parents in the unified district be able to
Right.
take
Right.
advantage of any pre-K opportunity in the unified district. So
Everybody's not
that,
gonna
after
do
the
that.
first year where it stays the same, towns and kids could choose to,
Go to Jamaica.
right, they
Because
could.
it's full-time.
they have
Right.
full
So
day.
we're
Shouldn't it say
But if we weren't,
Or we
right,
could go to
in,
Wyndham. We
have,
wanted 10
are
hours.
able to
But
have
we'd
any
send our kids out.
any in-house pre-K? Because then you might have, then what you're gonna wind up having is you could have half of your kids turn around that are in your pre-K program say, oh, no, we all wanna go to, Timpson Hill. Or we wanna go to Rock River, or we wanna go to Winston Prouty.
And get the 10 or 12 hours.
And then they get 10 hours.
Right,
10 hours.
right, absolutely.
That's available now.
Right, but then what does that do to their budget as far as?
It's not our
It's our
budget anymore,
budget.
it's all of our
It's the
budget.
unified
Right,
budget.
well, no, what does that do to our unified budget now that we are, well, no, you're saying that they have 10 hours in
They're full-time in
Full-time in
Jamaica,
Jamaica.
full-time in
Townsend.
Jamaica, full-time in
10 hours
Townsend,
of paid.
10 hours in Wyndham.
10 hours in Wyndham. Right now, at this point, we have 10 hours, but we're looking to escalate it up. But the thing is,
I think we discussed how every family
All right.
has a different feeling about what works for their family. So it allows them to make some decisions
And this-
based on what works for them.
I would just also, if I could just say about the pre-K, it is still, the kinks are still being worked out.
Being evolved, it's evolving.
It's evolving. It's
Yes.
only just starting to really go into full implementation. We're all fully, I would really be uncomfortable about us trying to make any
Decisions
plans
about it.
for the future board when we are still sort of working this law. I'm fine with that language.
Do we purposefully not have an Article 17? Is that an unlucky number?
Did we do that?
It's the 13th floor, you
Yeah.
know?
Oh, yeah.
Somebody's gotta catch that.
Whoops.
Somebody.
All right.
So the
Not sure what I
19
got
we
rid
were
of.
talking about last time is actually 18.
So, pre-K language, more discussion? No? Going once? Yeah, going twice. What, John, one quick question.
Yes.
Committee conclusions, new language, where's that?
So, that's up at the end of the report.
Up top, yeah.
At the end of the report, so what page is
Before the
it?
articles.
Is that like page?
Page 11, bottom of page 11.
Okay. So there's one more thing before that. We're talking about, other items. One of the things is, do we want to address in the report, or probably not in the articles, but some, do we want to address in there anywhere, like what happens if we don't do anything?
Oh, in case we don't move forward with what we're looking at, is that what you're talking about?
Or, you know, if the articles fail and we don't have a merger and we don't have a consolidation, do we want to address in there what happens next?
Oh,
Well,
Yes, Patty?
yeah, you know, we're voting on this at town meeting day. Are we having a contingency board? Yeah, people are still running for board on that day too, right?
Right.
Yeah, because the old boards stay in effect, even though the new board would come into effect. The old boards stay in effect to wind things down.
For how long,
But
Joe?
the old board, meaning the boards as
Under
they
these
are
articles,
now?
until they're not necessary anymore.
The boards as they are now, or a new board that's voted in on town meeting day?
Because we have, for example, we have one seat that is not going to, she's not gonna take it again. So we'll be voting for a
Go ahead.
replacement member for the
So
one seat.
the existing local boards will continue to function as as normal. So if you have an open seat, there'll be somebody running for that seat, fill it. and that board will keep functioning
Until,
until no longer than a year after the new board, the first year of the new district. It's one of the articles, I have to go find it for you, but.
I get confused because the first year of the new board, the new law is effective on July 1st, 2017. But, or the new board is effective July.
But they don't have a budget until the following town meeting
Right.
to run the year after that. So you still have to have a budget for next year.
For 17 to 18.
Yes.
Okay.
And then the new board would be working on their budget and
The
policies.
18, the 1920
1920 year.
budget.
Yeah, Article 14 actually it's page 16 of 28. It's Article 14, and it talks about that the boards will remain in existence
I just found it
as
confusing,
reasonably
that's all.
necessary for the purposes of that. Okay. So, but do we want to include anything in the report about what happens if the consolidation doesn't go forward? You know, what the next step would be, you know, whether it's, you know, then you have to do the alternative structure. It was a question that was raised.
Well, Joe, I think that, I mean, I don't think we should spend a whole lot of time on the alternative system until we know if this is gonna fail or not. I think actually Wyndham Central does many of the things that, you know, were desired when Act, whatever it is, 46 was put together. And so, and I'm also seeing in the last VSBA flyer, there was an article about what is gonna be required if you want to put together an alternative structure, and it's pretty.
You're talking about the draft rules that the state
Yes.
board is working on right
Yes.
now. They're not complete, they're in the process, they're
That's
starting
right.
to have a public comment
But they're
period.
pretty comprehensive, and so I
And they're
think
gonna change some, I think.
that would be great.
Well, I mean, they're pretty comprehensive, so I would be shocked if they didn't change some. I mean, there's a couple
Yeah.
of things in there I think that need help.
Yeah. Are you gonna testify regarding the rules?
Possible?
Yeah.
You could talk about the plan of the state, what the state says they're gonna do if
Okay.
there's no, you could do some of that.
That's what you're thinking?
Yeah, because I've had several, I talked to 3 people, and one of them actually was an educator, and they wanted to know what it was gonna look like if we didn't have this new unified school system and school board. They said, why? What is the state gonna do? What is it gonna look
So
like?
that's spelled out in the law, so you mean putting that.
Right, but
Right,
don't
so
not
no,
everybody
no, I'm-
understands.
We don't
that.
know, right?
Right.
No, I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying
Yeah.
it's spelled out in the law, we could put that in
Yeah.
the report, I guess. if we-
Okay.
Why don't I draft a few things, and you can take a look at it.
Okay.
Anybody can send me information.
Because people don't look at the law.
No, they don't, and they don't understand it.
I would include only what is known, and that would be from the law, right?
Right,
Mhm.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so the last thing is the conclusions. That's at the end, it's on page 11. And it's just a place where we're going to write a conclusion. Is that where, what are we?
You're right, Joe?
Excuse me, yeah. No, I think I'll be okay. What sort of conclusion are we looking for here, John?
Yeah, what do conclusions look like?
Well, I mean, we've laid out all of this data and information. Is that just simply a paragraph that says, based on all of this, we think this is a good idea, you should vote for it, or?
Or whatever you think, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Whatever, after all
Which I
this
don't think
consideration,
we're quite ready to write a conclusion.
what you think.
I think we better be able to write a conclusion by the
understand
next
you.
one.
That's more reasonable. I mean, I feel like there's still things that we're trying to work through and digest.
One of the things the other group did, if this would help you, people who had ideas for conclusions just emailed them to me, and I just started putting them together.
Okay.
So if you want to do that, that'll give us a place to start, so that you're not, so that
there's
at least have some
wording and we can
sense.
have something to discuss.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a good idea.
that's a very good
So
idea.
just email me your thoughts. Could be just sentence or two or paragraphs, whatever. and I'll try to put it together from what I hear.
Okay, so that's it. We've made it through the draft report.
Oh,
Again.
I'm sorry, there's one thing it would be helpful. I found out, I just got my first feedback from the state on the other group, and it turns out the name is more important
Than we thought?
Than we thought. Because
Oh, no.
you actually get identified and put into the, I don't know, Social Security Service or something. You know.
Oh, God,
But-
seriously?
So
Yes, you have
it's
to have
actually a legal name.
Federal tax
Yeah,
ID
yeah.
number.
So we just need some kind of name to use
Leland the
that.
Great Towns isn't gonna make it, huh?
You could, if that's what you want.
Yeah.
Whatever you want. I just, once I learned that it was more important than we thought. The
So they
boards
could
can't
be like
decide it later.
The West River Valley School District or something?
Yeah, something like that, or whatever you want to be.
Well, that's gonna be hard to come to.
The last time we said Wyndham Central Education District because we were gonna be the only merged Wyndham Central, but now that changed things now that there's another side working on it.
But the other side's, I think they're going to call themselves the Dover, Marlboro, Wardsboro Educational District.
Okay.
How
So
about the
Wyndham
what
Central
if
would still be
5?
open.
The what if five.
36 miles of trouble.
All right, well,
Okay.
think about it, But
Work on that, folks.
I like 36 miles of trouble, though. That sounds pretty good.
All
That's
right,
the name of our railroad.
Anita, I'm so sorry.
No, not at all. It's important for me to hear these discussions because I want to say that I was with a group of women today and I was trying to explain the whole Act 46 and what a yes vote means and what a no vote means, and it ruined my whole afternoon. Trying to explain it.
Tell me about it.
So I'm very impressed with what y'all are trying to accomplish here and the other committee as well. It's amazing. I want to start again by thanking Patty. She has been incredible in working with me on PR, keeping things up to date, getting Joe on the ball, and talking to John and connecting all four of us in this loop on PR. So thank you all very much for that. The brochure has arrived. Patty took care of getting it masterminded, printed today. In Wardsboro, for example, we realized that nearly 100 people have already voted. So we have maybe 250, 20-ish that are going to vote. So we printed 150 more, and what's left over we'll bring to our library and our schools. My recommendation has been to not go too crazy on this, because in a couple of weeks you're going to have new news, which is going to be the release of the articles for people to read, places where they can go for public information, if you're going to host public conversation sessions and all of that prior to town meeting day. So I see this as an interim piece, an important piece, but nonetheless an interim piece. As you may have seen, on the website, it's constantly updated every time a press release goes out. We did get a major press release out. Public service announcement has gone out that the brochure is going to be ready. Public service announcements go out before every meeting. It's been posted front porch here, there, and everywhere. Also, send home notes continue to go home with the schools. Bob here at this school has been posting it on his Facebook pages as well. So I think we're covering all the bases in terms of making people aware that this is happening, that it's ongoing, that it's something they can participate in, short of shanghaiing them all and dragging them in here. There's been very little feedback from people. I get almost no emails. I think 4 people, grand total, have asked to be updated on the website, and one of them was Rich. So it's 3 other people. So there hasn't been a lot of interest, although all over the blog site it says, you know, ask a question, send us your email, sign up, right on the front page, we'll send you stuff. And there's been very little sign up. So as far as I'm concerned, things are going the way I thought they would. And again, Patty's been great. If there's more PR ideas that you think you need, you want, that we can do more of, or once we get over this big hurdle, once the articles go out, I have not distributed any copies whatsoever of drafts. They haven't been posted anywhere, they haven't been distributed. I'm waiting for the go-ahead from the committee to finally post those, make those available and say, ta-da, now you can start reading up on what everybody did. Maybe then we'll get some feedback. So, so thank you, Patty, for helping with this.
Thank you.
You just brought up an interesting question.
Sir.
If we're gonna have all this prepared by January, so that things can be, you know, we have to, obviously, we're gonna have to have people to be elected to the new board and everything else, and also vote on Act 46, right? This is, has to be done by town meeting, this is all supposed to be voted on, correct? Hello? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, well, what happens if we have residents that are going to do absentee ballots for the Australian ballot, and they're going to Florida for the winter? They don't get a chance to vote on this because we don't have it on the ballot yet.
They can get their absentee ballot right up till when?
Yeah, but it's not on the ballot yet. What I'm saying is if they're leaving now, or they're leaving after Thanksgiving to go to Florida for 3 months.
But they can get them in the mail.
I don't think,
You can't
it's like
get an
none of
absentee
the
ballot for
warnings are
town
done
meeting
yet.
yet.
I know of no such thing as an absentee ballot for town meeting. I don't even think they have proxy, do they?
No, everybody.
Well, for Australian.
Yeah, but for an Australian
think
ballot,
they do.
they can get an absentee ballot and it can be
Yes.
mailed right to you
My
up
mom
to
had one.
whenever, starting whenever they have the ballot ready.
Have the warning done. And that's not done yet.
So they don't necessarily.
Just asking.
They don't necessarily, it's not voting early, it's absentee ballot.
Right,
Yeah, so they don't have to do it in person.
30 days.
So your deadline,
30 days?
your deadline then
With
needs
the
to be well in
absentee has to
advance
be
of town
prepared.
meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Because we don't have printed ballots in Wardsboro for anything.
We don't either.
You will now.
We don't either.
We do.
What I'm really missing is a real in-depth conversation about the actual student opportunities that we're increasing, and if then those need to be going out to the public, because that's what this is all about supposedly. And I don't recall us having really discussed all the benefits for the kids
Talk about this memo.
at large, at least, or at least, you know, in detail.
I would actually point out that we have articles and none of them talk about kids. We actually have not gotten to an article that says
Not
anything about
one.
educating kids yet.
And we're already thinking of
Just
conclusions.
So maybe an article that talks about.
That's because everything's gonna be equitable, we're gonna keep things the way they are.
We don't even say that. We don't have an
It's not
article
gonna
that says
be any
anything
more
about kids.
advanced until the new board comes in and
We did
makes
talk
some.
about your October 10th memo, right?
Well, if I could just go back to
Just some
PR for
down
a
the
second. Sorry about that. I get your point, and that's certainly something we can put in PR when we have those answers. But anyway, Patty, you want people to take these?
Yes,
And you all will bring them to your polling places or wherever you want. And the brochure is posted on the blog site as well. So if somebody wants one, they can just go to the blog and look at it, read it, or print it out right off the blog as well. So how do you want to distribute these?
I have 1,500 here, and I've got 2 boxes, and I've got elastics. So if everybody can just
Grab
take what
some.
you think you're gonna need.
Count out the number, how many?
Okay, so while we distribute ballots,
Flyers.
Flyers, sorry. It's too late, it's too late. Brochures, ballots, flyers, whatever. We have to plan the agenda for the next meeting. I went through my email responses and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, including John, that say they can make the 18th. I don't have any, Heidi, were you 18th, yes or no?
I can do 18th, yes.
Okay, so Heidi is a yes for the 18th. Brud?
I believe yes.
Brud is a yes for the 18th. Patty?
I believe so.
Patty's a yes for the 18th. Aaron, your schedule was up in limbo. There are a few no's, but there are more no's for the 14th and 15th with other
I can't make a Friday
scheduled
meeting.
meetings.
I drive up
Oh,
north
that's a
at night to go
Friday.
pick up 2 of my grandkids, and I don't
Okay.
miss time with them.
Okay, I understand. But we have we have a quorum of yeses for the 18th, and no other date was even close to being able to make it on that date.
We aren't gonna make a habit of Friday, are we?
No, this is, there is a WCSU budget meeting on the 16th that's been on the calendar for a year. Yeah, go ahead.
I think Drew had his hand up first.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I would ask that we not vote on sending these articles at a meeting that half of us can't attend. By changing the date and keeping the agenda, you're making it so that a lot of us are not gonna be able to vote on sending these articles off.
That's a good point.
So this is about 100.
That's the most important meeting we've had so far. We're gonna take a vote of this committee, and we've now changed the date so that half of us can't attend. Just putting it out there.
All right, go ahead.
What's the following Monday
Wait,
like?
hold it.
Oh, sorry.
I don't wanna throw another cog in it, but we have other conflicts with Wyndham Central meetings as well. Right?
Moving forward.
So the December 7th meeting is a conflict with the Wyndham Central Board meeting?
Wyndham Central's having another board meeting then?
It's budget.
It's budget season, Joe.
And so I'm just, I would, you know,
I have a question.
Sure.
What about the 16th, a little earlier in the evening? Like,
By the way, the girl at Staples can't.
can people come a little bit earlier? That, I mean, it's gonna be a grueling day for those of us who have to go to the WCSU meeting too, but
are you not going to the policy thing at UVM?
no. Healthcare? It's the reason I ran for office in the first place, but.
So you're suggesting, Carolyn, the 16th earlier?
Yeah.
Well,
I
the
mean,
Wyndham
that
Central
was
Board
the-
starts at 7, so.
Right, I mean,
Actually,
we'll be here at like
I think there's,
5.
I think there might even be, if I'm just trying to remember, but I think there may even be a executive committee meeting prior to that?
I'm just making
On
a
compensation?
suggestion.
Did we call one?
I don't know, I'm trying to remember.
We're talking about
Because I think she did in a lot of ways, but she just generalized what they were doing, what she was.
Oh, but she said
Sure,
on
so
the
I think
7th.
that's everything.
Would you say the central meeting is on the 7th, or it's at 7th?
The Leland Gray
Yeah.
meetings at the WCSU is at 7, right?
On the
Yes.
16th, yes.
So are we saying meet at 5?
Well, I'm just putting it on the table
I can do
as a
that.
discussion point.
Well, you know,
It might
yeah,
not work.
I mean, if we're gonna hold the meeting and stick to the agenda, can we get people here on the 16th at like 5:30?
I don't know.
5:30?
Yeah,
Yeah, we can.
John, can you be here?
Works for me, yes.
I think I could.
Well, if you're gonna do it 5:30, you're gonna be done by 7, so it's an hour and a half.
Oh
If
yeah,
you're
we're
gonna do it
adjourning at
5,
7 for WCSU, because it'll be in the same room.
I mean, should we go for 5, try to start for 5?
Can people get here at 5?
We can. There's 2 of us here.
On the
You
16th
should go
now.
around the room and get everybody to answer.
Try my darndest, I gotta be here
It's
later
Wednesday,
anyway.
yeah.
But I also don't want to force something of like, that would happen on the 16th that Drew brings up, where we're, asking people to vote and people can't make it. I think people should be here
I think they should too.
if we're
I
gonna be
agree with you,
voting on
Carolyn.
this.
I can be here.
All right, so everyone can be here at 5 o'clock on the 16th. Everyone in this room.
Right,
Everyone's
so I
here,
only have to
everyone's.
change the time, because we've already done our PSA and all that, so.
Right,
it's
we just
easier
have to change the time.
than the date.
Who's missing from this group?
Can you be here then?
Kelly is, Ian is,
Kelly is, Ian is, shoot, there was one more.
So they're missing 3.
you guys have.
Pam,
We're all here.
did you make this
Oh.
all right? You're not on the committee.
I don't get out of the hospital till 5.
Okay, so, all right, then I guess because, that works. That wasn't one of the suggestions when we started exploring dates. We'll do 5 o'clock, November 16th.
So,
What?
Making dinner, Joe? You
No, we're gonna try to
smoking
do 5.
Okay.
you smoking a?
No.
Since we usually do 2 hours.
So we'll work on the final version of the report on articles. We may have some more connections with citizen things. Anything else need to be on the agenda for that night?
And we may vote or not.
Well, we're getting down to the point where we need to send a draft of the articles to the
Oh,
AOE.
I'm gonna have to send, I'll need to send this draft.
Yeah, this is gonna.
This draft will
Okay,
go.
this is going
And
to the
I get tons of feedback.
Because it's
Okay.
draft.
And most of it's minor stuff. It
So do we
doesn't
need to
change the
vote them,
content.
do we need to vote next meeting then to, you know, these are our articles, we
Let's look at our time,
release them?
let's look at our timeline again, to
So
see
I'll-
when we,
I wanna make sure we do something about the 7th, because I know there's a Wyndham Central meeting that night. These meetings, just so you know, these Wyndham Central meetings were set like a year ago. And we just didn't look at them when we set our meetings.
Right.
yes, I think after the 16th, the plan was to final articles to the state board. Now, if you scheduled a meeting,
We should take that up with the WCSU board chair.
What am I
you-
missing?
I mean, maybe if you scheduled another meeting right after that, the following week or something.
That's Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that's Thanksgiving
How
week.
about 21st?
Excuse me, I just want to mention too that in terms of your publications, and getting stuff in print and in the papers and all that, you've got to look at some of your deadlines for that too. The Wyndham News and Notes is one with a 2-month deadline and some other things, so keep in mind deadlines.
Well, Wyndham News and Notes is every 2 months. but
Right.
The deadline is,
Right.
pretty close to it.
Maybe if you reserve the 21st in case you needed to meet again.
Yeah, can we meet the 21st?
Of November?
November, yep.
Okay.
Or at least you should reserve
That's
it.
Monday before Thanksgiving.
It's Monday, the 21st of November.
Okay. I don't know, I gotta look at my calendar. Oh, actually. No, I'll be in New York City.
Yes, I think Vermont Digger. What time? And the reformer.
7, regular time. And it's just a reserving the date. If we can't get through voting on the articles on the 16th, we should do them on the, we should,
I can't count.
on the 21st, about the 21st?
I'm gonna be in New York City, but if Angie can vote for us, then.
That's not,
Joe,
is that?
At 7?
I don't
Yes.
think that's
so
possible. We don't
on
have.
the
That's
16th,
a CSG.
it's 5 o'clock,
Yes,
and
I have to go to New
we're
York
also on the
Right, but I'm saying, getting
21st
somebody
at
to vote in your
7.
place.
we're looking at it, yeah.
She's not an
As
official
that way-
committee member.
If we don't finish,
If we don't finish on the 16th,
Maybe on the 16th, maybe on the 16th, you could put whatever your reservations or non-reservations or whatever out.
Yeah.
And so your vote
21st?
would be.
Raise your hands if you can go to the 21st.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Raise your hand if you can go to the 21st.
You guys can make the 21st, right, Brookline?
yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty
Okay.
sure.
How about those guys?
Bucky and Ken, 21st?
Pardon?
Can you make the meeting on the 21st if we don't finish business on the 16th?
November 21st?
Yes, sir.
Well, I guess.
When's Thanksgiving?
25th, 24th.
It's Monday before
It's the
Thanksgiving.
Monday of Thanksgiving week, and then I assume everybody will clear out and go somewhere good. You can make it? You can't make it?
I'm with you.
I'll do that.
That's what you always say.
That's at 7?
Yes. All right.
Are we working on an agenda for the next meeting?
Agenda for the next meeting is to finish, is to try and finalize these articles.
Can we talk in depth about kids?
Review John's October 10th 4-page memo.
I have.
And
But
let's
we would like,
discuss it.
I would like to discuss actual educational opportunities for kids as opposed to, there's a memo attachment. It really bothers me that we get through the entire articles and the only place we mention kids is in an appendix.
You gotta remember what the articles are about.
I understand,
Okay.
this is not about kids, but I want to make sure that we are putting kids at the center of this conversation.
Okay.
At least we can say our meeting was about kids.
All right, so finalize the articles, discuss that memo and the opportunities for kids. What was the one other thing here? Oh, more PR pieces if we need them.
Is there any reason we shouldn't send out our draft articles to the public now? If we're sending them to the state, send them out through our blog so that we can have comments from the public?
Do you have an opinion on that, John?
I think there's, I think it's really dangerous because we may get some stuff back from the state, you know, that we're out of bounds on something. And if we've already sent it out, I mean, I'm not anticipating any of that, but
It would put us in a position where we have to backpedal.
Well, I think we're still in a state of flux a little bit, so you don't wanna put something else that's not.
I think if somebody asks to look at them is
Yeah,
one thing,
you have
but,
no choice
because
but
it's,
to show them.
yeah, but to
But
actually actively,
posting
yeah,
It's different.
Yeah.
it's a little, because you don't wanna create problems
Right.
for yourself.
I don't think you want to put out drafts, you want to put out a final, say, this is what we did.
But there's no reason that you can't solicit feedback from anybody who wants to share.
Yeah.
But they're not gonna know what we're talking about. unless they
Well, I'm
take
just saying
information
you,
out.
if you have somebody who's interested in it.
They've also,
Are we going to be talking about having forums for communities to hear what they're thinking? Not just telling them what we're doing, but to hear their thoughts and worries about Act 46? Because I think that could help why we are.
Well, if we do that, that kind of a process needs to take place before.
It wouldn't be anything that we could change the articles on. I mean, we looked for that kind of input from the exploratory committee, and people could come to this meeting early on and give us that kind of feedback. You know, we can't really go out and like say, here's what we've come up with in a lot of work.
I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying I think there's a lot of worries out there about Act 46. So hearing what the concerns are may alleviate that, because we know how to address it and so forth.
I think that's part of the whole outreach process, is to go out and say, tell us your concerns, and then we can answer the questions. We may not be able to alter what is what we're proposing to address some question, but we can certainly respond to the questions and the fears that people have.
A lot of unknowns.
Right, and that concerns me, because I think
Right,
with
so
a lot
that's
of
the-
unknown, that's where people
That's
are
the
like.
public engagement process,
Yeah.
so that we open up the conversation so that we alleviate that unknown. That's really important, and it's gonna take more than just one or two meetings.
And what happened is, the committee made some decisions not to do that early on. You made decisions that you were gonna put up a blog, and you were gonna do flyers, you were gonna do a bunch of other things.
You know, we have a bunch of conversations going on here, and I think
Yeah. Are you guys, the side meeting over there was drowning out the real meeting.
I just wanted to hear what she was saying, so.
Go ahead.
What do you want me to say again?
Yeah, I think people wanna hear what you have to say.
So my question was about getting information out to the townspeople to make sure that we hear what they have to say and we can answer questions to the best of our ability. There are a lot of unknowns, as you have said, but I think it's important that we discuss how that works, you know, and what it looks like. And I think if we go at it and say, well, this is what it is and there's nothing we can do, I don't think we're going to get a positive response. But if we hear what they have to say and say, this is what we were able to come up with, that's just my thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I think people tend to jump on the bandwagon when they feel like they have been listened to, as opposed to being told what has to happen.
Yeah, and that's part of the engagement process, that, you know, we may even start talking about that at our next meeting with, you know, talking about connection with citizens. If we get articles finalized that we want to send out and release, then that's the next big piece of the committee's work, is to go out and, you know, talk through
Right,
what
and-
we've done.
And for that, I would issue posters again, like I did before. The poster that's out already says display through December 31st. So let's say January 1st, you're ready to release articles, then there'd be new posters that went out to the communities. There'd be a ton more press release, the blog would be all updated. We'd send copies to the press, and we certainly could highlight certain articles and say, here's the really good parts of this, and let the press kind of nudge them to say, talk about this part more. So that's certainly stuff we can do through PR. And then again, I think it's important to set those dates, because you know how busy people are, and some weather, rain dates and snow dates, and say there's going to be a couple of meetings here and a couple of meetings there to chat about what we came up with. But you have to go into that meeting with confidence and say, ta-da, we worked for months on this, we love it, it's great. You know, you can't go in and say, well, we're not sure if this is the right thing or not. It has to be like, we slaved over this, it's great.
I was late because I was at the select board meeting in Brookline, and I did a presentation on where we are to the select board, and what we've gone through, the 28 pages that we have done, and we've had 2 meetings and blah, blah, blah. And this is what we know now, but things are gonna change and things will be in flux and so on and so forth. And then I have my 250 brochures that are gonna be handed to people as they go out of the town hall for voting. And it went very well. You know, there were 10-minute presentation and 15 minutes of questions, and I jumped in my car and came here. So, and they will all communicate with people too.
Yeah.
Can I follow up on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
I just want to make sure that we have a conversation about that process that you just talked about, Sherry. And I know I missed the last 2 meetings, but I did watch them, and I heard that we had decided that we were not going to go specifically to select board meetings. You clearly did, and Ken did. But if we're going to go out and speak about the process that we're going through on this committee, first of all, I hope that we will share with all of our fellow committee members, representatives from our town, that we're doing that so that we all get to participate, number one. And number two, that we are representing this committee in facts and the process that we're actually going through. I think we have to be really careful not to, even if we disagree with something in there, the process, and I'm asking for your feedback on this more than anything, but to me, the process we're going through and the steps we're going through and the discussions we're having are what we talk about when we're going out to the public, and not about, you know, how we feel about something. And I think it's literally an official role that we're in. We're a member of a board, or in this case, a committee, and I think we have a responsibility to represent the whole committee when we do that. So I just hope we're all in agreement on that.
I would agree. I actually brought extra copies of what I shared with the select board in case
Good.
anybody's interested.
Great.
And as far as that goes, I was asked a while ago to come up in front and represent on how the energy project was going in Newfane and what's going on with Act 46 as the school board chair. And I had been telling my board, if anybody ever went to my meetings would know, that I said, I've been promising I would go to the one select board meeting and give a brief presentation on these 2 topics, and have not yet had the time, and happened to have the time at their last meeting and went. And apparently I've been criticized about using my number of $100,000 increase for the Newfane taxpayers, and if I use the formula that I was saying earlier, which is you total up the 4 school budgets, the number of students, and divide it, you'll get a cost per pupil. And that comes out to $22,255. And then you take, you said Newfane and Brookline actually paid less now with special aid costs, which is $18,646, and subtract that from the other number, you'll come out with, we're paying $3,609 more, and then you multiply that by the number of students in the school, and you'll come out with $425,826. I think that's a little inflated of a number, because I was estimating about 100,000. I don't think it's going to go up that high, and this is going by the numbers that have been presented to me by the committee.
So Ken, the number of $100,000, and since you brought it up, I'll just mention it, was brought up at a public information meeting on a different topic in the town of Newfane.
In my opinion, from my
If you just let me
calculations,
finish,
the
I'll
number
just-
would
I'll
go up
just
at
say,
least $100,000.
there was no decision by this committee that the town of Newfane was going to be impacted by $100,000, and yet it was brought up by the select board chair that that was going to be an impact on the town of Newfane. Now, what that number is, whether it's up, down, or doesn't change anything at all, has not been decided yet. We haven't even finalized these numbers. We don't know, and plus, it's only a piece of the story. I mean, there's incentives to offset that and all sorts of other things that need to be talked about. So the reason I bring it up is because I think it's really important. We have to be careful about what we say because it gets repeated. And it was repeated in front of a room full of about 50 people that were, I'm sure, pretty concerned that Act 46 was going to cost Newfane $100,000 it was going to cost taxpayers $100,000 when we don't actually even know if that's true yet. We don't know if it's going to cost them anything at this point in time. And I think that it's just important that we're careful in what we say and that we report just what we know and nothing more.
If we're gonna take all these budgets and add them together.
I'm not talking about the.
Well, no, because we need all these budgets are gonna become one budget. We still have to sustain these schools.
When the articles are done, we can speak to those exact figures. I agree with that.
Okay.
I'm just saying,
And I
let's
will
just be
say,
careful
I had-
about what we say.
I said on many occasions, in my opinion, I said, and from what I have been told, that everything will be equitable, that every elementary school, that nothing is going to change at this point as far as, is Jamaica gonna get anything extra? Is Newfane gonna get anything extra? Is Wyndham or Townsend gonna get anything extra added to their curriculum as it stands now?
So the details aren't important. My point is only
But the
that.
details are important.
Listen, not to my point. My point is that if we're going to go out and speak on behalf of the committee, all representatives from the community should know that we're doing that if we're gonna do it in an official role, because the select board certainly felt that that was official, because the select board chair told me it was when I asked him about it. So I would hope that if we're all gonna do that, we'll let each other know that we're doing it, number one, and we just speak about facts that we know and that we have discussed at this committee. We need to represent this committee to the public. That's all I'm asking.
Yes, Betty.
Plus, in doing things that aren't actually maybe factual, maybe even decided yet, we could be tainting, after all of our time that we've put into this, creating a situation that there's a no vote. There's a town that's gonna vote it down, and they know, and you know, it just, and none of that is really decided yet as to what the actual numbers are. And would be kind of a waste of our time.
Are we gonna have the actual
Halfway
numbers next
through.
week?
The only facts that this committee has come up with is the numbers. Everything else is presumption of what will happen and how we can try to keep it that way or expand on it.
We should have
Everything
the actual
else is not factual.
charts filled in.
The assets and debits.
The assets and liabilities
If I'd
and
been there, I'd have a
values
lot more
of the
to say.
buildings.
Maybe we have
You
that
know,
opportunity.
The number that Ken's come up with, I don't think we'll actually have that number because that's guesswork. You know, that, it doesn't agree with our current analysis of our current numbers and applying the formulas. You know, his calculations don't match the article's calculations, which is one of the dangers, I think, of going on. I mean, if it's not what we have as a committee, as a working document, it's dangerous to start throwing other things around. But we should have, I mean, all you have to do to get a number is ask for what we're looking for. I mean, tonight we're talking about how we need the assets and the liabilities and the debts and the values of the properties, and we'll have those numbers. If there's another number that you think you need, then you should, you know, email John, ask for it, let us know now.
But the point of explaining those numbers is they need to be explained. So when we have those numbers, and we talked about this tonight, when we have those numbers, that's going to be, there's a number that shows what it would be like without the incentives, then with the incentives, and that's the first year. But then it requires a conversation about what those following years will be as well, and the opportunities that a school board will have, a school district board will have to improve education for kids and maximize resources. There are opportunities for that, and I think if you end it at a number, you're not telling the whole story. And I would also say that there's a reason why we're in this room. There is a real tangible reason why we're sitting here, why this law passed. There are challenges that we are all facing, and we need to be able to explain what those are. And are we able to continue moving forward the way we are today? And I think the fact that we're sitting in this room and that law did pass says that we need to examine this. And that's what this is about. It's about a study. We need to speak to the study.
This model has not changed any bit, really, since the red study or the mud study. If anybody recalls that pretty much everything is basically the same. We're not taking anything from any school, we're just adding it all together, coming up with a budget. Now, when Steve Morris came to our informational meeting in Newfane, okay, and he's up at the Capitol up there, he had said, he even made the comment, every town is going to benefit except for Newfane and Brookline. Your taxes are going to go up. And being that no magic numbers are really going to change here, obviously the situation isn't going to change, and I'm not being unrealistic. I think I'm being more realistic than anybody else in the room.
Did you have a comment?
The comment is, before we come up with a conclusion, and Emily said it best, I need to be able to understand and explain the numbers and the benefits to kids. And I don't feel at this moment in time, after sitting in this room, meeting after meeting after meeting, that I could stand in front of a group of Jamaica taxpayers and explain the finances and the benefits to kids. I'm not there. I can't vote on this because I'm not there. So I'm hoping that we'll have whatever we need at the next meeting to make me feel like I can explain this to the taxpayers. That's why they put us on this committee, was to do the work and then take that work back and show them. I'm not at a point where I can do that. And I have a feeling that by the end of the next meeting, I'm still not gonna be at a point where we can do that. Because there's still a lot of questions in my mind about students. I've seen the memo, I've read the memo, we haven't really discussed students yet. And that's, in my opinion, the most important part of this conversation. And that's what I want to be able to engage taxpayers with. Yes, the numbers are important, and I want to be able to explain the numbers so that when somebody asks, they're getting the right information. But what most people are going to ask about are the kids. And we have not discussed the kids yet. So that's all I'm asking for our next agenda. Let's make sure that we're all able to explain that before we go to a vote. I know we have a timeline, I know we really want to drive this thing through, but I think we're doing our public a disservice by not understanding it ourselves before we vote.
All right, it's on the agenda.
So
Yes.
can I just say one thing? I think I understand that we'll have some of these answers in terms of what happens if we don't do this by July 1st. They have some sort of laws in place, which is one of the things that you're gonna bring back that's gonna go in these articles, right? Because I think that's the other important piece. I mean, as we're talking about numbers and we're talking about being able to discuss this with our townspeople, I think the other piece we need to be able to start explaining is if we in fact don't vote or go through with this, what could the state do to us after July 1st? And when would it take place? When would it be enforced? Because I would like to be able to explain that.
That would be great.
Written down in the
Yeah, that's
timeline.
an
excellent point, yeah.
We should get that in there.
If we can talk about it so that we understand it, I think it is important.
We'll add it to the, section of the report. And the in-depth discussion of the students' benefits will be on the agenda. So one more thing, Emily has pointed out, there's also a WCSU budget meeting on the 7th of December, which is also a scheduled meeting here. When we were scheduling these things, we apparently weren't looking at the WCSU calendar.
Can we do that one earlier in the afternoon as well?
What, is that a Wednesday?
Yeah, it's a Wednesday. Wednesday, December 7th is another WCSU meeting.
I have to look at my
Yeah.
calendar.
Well, more importantly, can our recorder be here? Okay, just check it, you know, 'cause everyone's like,
Can we do it on the
We're just
8th?
taking him for
we have a
granted.
quorum, but do we have a recorder?
The 8th is probably one of the older ones.
Well, you do.
Should we all check our schedules
Is Dover doing
and?
on Thursday?
They're not
Can
sure.
our media man be here?
And even, I'm gonna be out of town, but I can participate virtually, although at this point, you're really talking about communication. So
about
it is
12?
gonna be more in person here.
How about the 12th?
I'll be back to 12.
John's not available on the 7th. John would be joining us virtually. He's out of town that week. We could do the 12th perhaps.
I'll be gone. I'll be in Taiwan.
No.
No.
Could we do, can we do it earlier on the 7th, or did?
John's not here.
John's not here.
Well,
But as he pointed out, by that point, the articles are done, voted on. We're really on to community engagement. The more important consultant for that meeting is Anita.
I'll be here.
John could certainly join us virtually, you said. That does work.
What if we backed it up to the 30th, though, the week before? Which is 2 weeks from our 16th meeting, if, in fact.
It's a Wyndham Central Board meeting as well.
Oh, okay. I was thinking being the last. Okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking 5 weeks, there can't be a meeting then.
There's three meetings that Wyndham Central has
Okay.
to hold, and it's the 16th, the 30th, and the 7th.
Okay.
And we scheduled those last
And
year.
Thursdays don't work, right?
Well, Thursday is maybe the Dover committee meeting,
Well,
the 8th.
The first is what I was
Anita.
talking about, the next day after the
December
30th.
1st.
What about the 1st, folks?
I don't know, I've got to look at my schedule.
I could do the 1st.
No. I won't be here. But go ahead.
No, I just like the, nope.
Newfane has a whole passel of representatives.
So,
That's a Thursday.
Bucky's a no on the 1st.
John, could
Anybody
you
else?
be here on the
I don't
1st?
know.
Virtually.
Virtual.
So we're now talking the 16th, the 21st, and December 1st, is that correct?
Yes.
It is possible.
Well, the first is a possibility. I mean, by that point, we're mostly to public engagement piece. We'll probably be talking a lot about, what's the next step? How do we go meet with the towns about articles, things like that? Because by the end of the 21st, we gotta be pretty much finalized. So.
Are there WCSU meetings on Mondays?
No.
They're on Wednesday.
They're on Wednesdays.
So Mondays work for anybody?
Yeah, we suggested the 12th, but people said no.
That's the board meeting at the
Those tend to be a
Townsend
lot
School.
freer than
Some
Wednesdays
Mondays
and
work and
Thursdays.
others don't.
12th is, yeah.
The 12th is a Townsend board meeting?
Yeah.
So that'd
be me.
tank Brud.
Right, well, the rest of us will probably be here, but yeah, I just wanted to see if Brett couldn't. Is the 5th not a possibility for a Monday?
Not doing it.
That's probably our
That's
board
our
meeting.
Fifth of
Okay.
what?
December.
First
November.
Monday.
Fifth
Okay.
of December
The
is
second.
not a Monday.
Yes.
Is it?
Again,
Yes.
it's mostly
I
PO.
get the real day.
So you could possibly be here at 7.
So we
could
can't,
spend all night on these meetings.
let's just,
I'm sorry, it was just
Well,
something that
if we
came
don't
up.
have a quorum, we just can't make a decision and we can just inform.
You wanna set it for 5
I hate
o'clock?
to say
and then
it, but
see
that's the way it's
make a
gotta be,
decision
people.
Later meeting.
let's tentatively go for 5 o'clock on December, whatever, the 7th. Do it early again,
Same date.
and on December 7th, just do it before the WCSU meeting again. And we can revisit this,
At the 16th?
certainly at the 16th and again on the 21st if we need to. We can always move this meeting, we only need 3 days to warn it, so.
5 PM, you said?
Yep.
So 5 on the 16th.
Would you list
16th you would.
Yeah.
agenda items and the meetings?
So
The
5 on
agenda-
this, let's do it.
Okay, 5
5 on the
o'clock on the
16th.
16th,
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock on the 21st, 5 o'clock on the 7th.
Got it.
Agenda items are, continue discussing the articles, discussion of opportunities for students,
Connection with citizens.
And connection, and community engagement.
And what happens if we don't have a use for?
Well, that'll be in the articles, there'll be a piece in the articles and we'll talk about, you know, what that means.
Seven to five, and we'll discuss.
Now, with their consequences of failure, opportunities, numbers,
What time, the seventh?
did I hear those?
Well, the numbers are part of the articles, and then what happens if nothing goes forward is the language of the statute that goes in the report. Those won't be specific article or specific agenda items, it'll just be part of the whole articles and report discussion. Anything else, folks? Please,
Just
somebody.
if one person.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Patty.
If one person from each town, there's 50s and a couple of 100s there. So take some things for your polling place, not for distributing all other places, because I only printed 1,500.
Okay.
I'll make motion to adjourn.
Yes, second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. We are done.
Sense.